start talking and I'll respond.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone here from Central Victoria in Australia. Dave Fox, please welcome Azirahel Jones from New Zealand. It's now 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm led to believe, over there. So we're enjoying our lovely winters in both respective countries. And today we're conducting this recording, and it will be uploaded later on. Obviously, I don't know how long YouTube takes for these things, but they take forever and a day at times. So be patient. If you happen to come across it beforehand, great. But we've got a few subjects that we want to talk about today, from automation, conditions in the countries, moving forward, etc. So, well, I don't want to take too much more of the introduction. As is, do you want to introduce yourself and explain a bit of your background?
Okay. Hi, Fox. Hi, gang. Background. I come from a different place from Dusty and Fox. I'm not a union organizer. I'm just somebody who ended up getting involved in the community, not as an organizer, just as a volunteer. So I guess I'm working my way up to where you guys are. It's like I volunteer at a local food bank, I volunteer at old folks' homes, volunteer as a gardener, all sorts of stuff, because it's not a great economy and I can't find a job, and I'm a bit of a weirdo, so that does make it a little bit harder. But I also like to help people. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to help people, and so that's where I'm coming from. I don't have that strong union background. I don't have all that kind of stuff. I just care about people, and I want to do some good in the world. And lo and behold, that's how I ended up becoming a communist, because that's what it's all about when it gets right down to it.
And look, I'm saying here, I think that's what the fundamental thing. I think all of us are in this fight together. We do care about other people. We care about our planet. We care about all our surrounds and neighbourhoods, etc., like that. So what you just described there is like, it's still organising. You're actually organising, basically, in some way, or community gardens. It's bringing people together, uniting them, be it around food production, which is quite interesting. Because we've got a lot of community gardens over here. We have Earth Worker Cooperative, setting up worker cooperatives around Victoria at the moment. I hope it goes nationwide. And I think that is a fundamental part of the organising for the struggle. I think people want to fight the system, fight, but forgot about, you've got to also do the other parts of organising the neighbourhoods and have them organised and empowered to do things. And even just from stuff like community garden, I love doing that. I love growing veggies and fruit and veggies anyway. It's quite an enjoyable pastime when you think about it. It's quite rewarding work as well. So that way it does bring a form of people together, like where capitalism, so all you have to do is consume and be divided all the time, your own little self-island, separated from everywhere else. Very metaphysical background. So well done. I hope it really... I hope the community garden, that type of organising is taking off in New Zealand. I understand the economic situation is not good over there. It's not good either, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, to describe what is the economics? What's it currently like in New Zealand with that?
I can't really give you a detailed overview. I can only give you my experiences.
Fair enough.
From my experiences, much the same as always. There's people complaining about COVID and taxes and stuff, but no real change. I would say that, in all honesty, we came out of this COVID business about as good as we could expect. I don't know if you've even glanced at the news relating to little old New Zealand recently, but we've had a small outbreak in Auckland, which is our de facto capital city. It might as well be. It's the big
Wellington.
Yeah. It's not the capital city, but it's the one where it's the big one where all the rich people live. So it might as well be. And so we are currently on level 2, which for us is just be careful, wear masks, wash your hands, all that kind of stuff, and take it all very seriously. There's a rumor that we might be going into level 3, which is lockdown, but we're not going to crack the whip. And level 4 is lockdown, and we crack the whip, and we will fine you shit if we catch you doing stupid things outside, which is, fair comment. People forget that you don't just have to build rules for sensible, smart people like yourself. You have to build rules that also encompass idiots. And so, we may not like the idea that the police can crack the whip and give us fines and, drag us off to jail or make us do push-ups or whatever, but they do serve a purpose, even if a lot of the time the purpose is bad.
They certainly do. And actually, interesting as well, in Victoria, here, Melbourne's in level 4 lockdown. The rest of regional Victoria is level 3. That doesn't mean I can just go for a leisurely Sunday drive through the countryside. I can travel during the week because that's my work. I have to do all that. But yeah, I can't just travel down to the coast or something for a leisurely trip running on a weekend. I'd still have to go up to the shops, exercise, do all the other things. Level 4, it's a lot stricter. They've got strict curfews from 5 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. Notice there's some certain exemptions, like if it's an emergency or we have to get to a hospital, etc. The cops can give a little bit of a leeway with that. But unfortunately, we also had our fair share of fools here as well. From the outright nutting conspiracy theorists right down to actual outright neo-Nazi fascists complaining it's it's an invasion of China and it's the Chinese blue and all this and garbage that went with it from those who think it's some sort of flying spaghetti monster that's controlling us through the current 5G network. I think it's and I actually what I find was appalling behaviour too by those lot. They think they didn't have the right. They think they had the right to not wear a mask. I mean, we had one grown woman. She just walked straight into Bunnings there, and of course, understand like anywhere a corner shop to a massive big supermarket, hardware chain, and that's a workplace, and they are required to wear masks in that place. It's there for occupational health and safety as well. And there she is abusing workers after being requested to wear a face mask and carrying on, putting up on Facebook. I mean, the police arrested her at the end of the day and she is being charged, which is good, and going to court. And obviously there was a backlash against that as well. And like I was saying in a lot of my videos, no one's got the right to walk into a shop, be it a large-scale supermarket, whatever it is, and start abusing workers. That is their area of work. If they're asking you to put a mask on, put a mask on. Simple as that. It's just like you won't. Well, I like to see them walk on a construction site. These type of people walk on a construction site and argue why they shouldn't have to wear a hard hat and safety glasses and steel cap boots. Because of their human rights, because of the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights or something that says in Magna Carta back in the 1200s. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Well, it's the same principle, basically. I mean, it's not every day somebody drops a spanner and it hits you on the head. But, you've got to wear the helmet just in case it's that one day in 1,000 where it happens.
It does, and it can happen. Accidents are quite rife, and in all sorts of industry, especially construction and mining and farming to a certain degree as well. But, yeah, so these people are going around and thinking they've got the right not to wear a mask and all this. It's not about oppressing their rights at all. It's about trying to stop a deadly virus. And it is. We just had someone yesterday. It was in the news that someone in their 20s died of this virus. So young age is not a guarantee to recover from it. We had in the last 3 weeks, we had 3 cases of deaths. Those that died in their 30s, and so it's something when they say, "Oh, you might have had a pre-condition to that," they might possibly, but regardless of the point, they died of COVID-19, and it's something we have to take, and we want to try and beat this virus. It's positive to see looks like there's vaccines coming out, which is a positive thing. Around, and the other thing as well, I think it's just I know I don't like wearing a mask all the time. It's irritating, especially one with a beard. But at the end of the day, I know it's a pain, but look, it's got to be done, and that we all should be uniting, pulling together to beat this virus. And that I think we have to worry about what's going to happen ahead after it. We'll deal with that then. But I think the main prime thing is get this virus out of the way. So yeah,
I think it's a valuable learning experience for us all, because the virus is going to come back. It's going to, this that we're living through now, it's going to come back again. Even if we get a vaccine, there's a good chance that, like HIV, like the flu, that there will need to be a new vaccine every year or two.
Yes.
And so you'll have flare-ups if the new outbreak breaks out before the vaccine's ready, if that's even possible. In fact, my understanding is in many cases you've got to have the flare-up so you can get the vaccine.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is going to keep going, and then you'll have the next not coronavirus. Maybe it'll be COVID SARS-3 or something completely different, because the conditions that caused this outbreak haven't changed. So there'll be more of it.
Yeah, exactly. And oh, look, it's like that. I'm not surprised we'll find a way to mutate. It's also too depending on the climatic conditions. As someone actually talked to my good old comrade of mine, talked to me the other day on the phone. I'll catch up with him over the phone at least once a week. A great teacher and mentor of mine as well. But he says, look, this is a product of capitalism. But you understand too, with warming climate, I'm not going to get too far off the track, but yeah, with warming climate, we're finding new diseases are now that were frozen in time. They're now suddenly being released, and it is a concern. And I think as we live more closely with each other and there's less habitat for nature and all that, these sort of things are to be expected. And I think the real issue is how we're going to properly tackle this so we can reverse it. It also comes down to the fact is it's also the social economic system we live under. We call capitalism. It's been the cause for this problem for a long time. And I think one thing, though, the positive out of all this, it's certainly, when I want to talk about the economic conditions in the respective countries, it certainly has exposed, I don't know, Dad, your country as well, the country you're in, exposed how vulnerable we are and how reliant we're on the rest of the world for imports, manufactured goods, and etc. And one thing the union I'm involved in has got some really excellent policies and been trying to lead the forefront about bringing a strong manufacturing base back in Australia. And because a lot of the stuff we import, even from basic medical gear, medical equipment, we have to rely on other countries to bring that in. Being an island nation like yourselves, that's left us right in quite a lot of vulnerability. But the upside of that now, it's put everything back on the agenda again. They're having this, at least one thing about this free market, free neoliberal, got to have free trades and all the free trade agreements and everything else, and everything being ripped and thrown out of respecting countries to somewhere else to be manufactured. We have to depend on it. The only industries that would be a service industry or tourism, etc., which really by rights not the kickstarter for any economy, be it all, regardless of what social system it is. You do need to have a strong manufacturing base to have a strong domestic economy. So there's been some great discussions around that. There's and obviously you got the neoliberal type attitudes. Unfortunately, both major parties have still got that laissez-faire neoliberal policies and believe in free trade, or free trade will get us out of this. Well, free trade hasn't got us out of anything. To be perfectly honest, certainly here in Australia, it's just made things worse. I think we do need to have a good discussion about not just about bringing manufacturing here to our respective countries again, but also too about the social economic system we live under as well. It's just failure to provide. COVID-19 is a classic case. It's failure to actually seriously take a grip hold of this. Where I look at countries like Vietnam, even China, although not perfect by any means, but they're certainly got on top of these things, although I believe they've had outbreaks again. Cuba, etc.
Yeah, they're like us. They had another outbreak that was significantly smaller than the original one.
Yeah.
And they have done what I suspect we will all end up having to do, which is rather than shut down the whole country, shut down the affected areas. Because this is going to keep, it's like stamping out a brush fire. It's going to keep popping up.
Yeah.
And so you need to have a system that allows you to actually deal with it while also, actually getting the job done. But unfortunately, what you say is very sensible. We do need any country needs to have some manufacturing capacity within its own borders to deal with issues like this. Maybe not necessarily, making medical equipment, but in this particular instance, it probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
But that is counterproductive for capitalism. Capitalism goes where the profits are. As loads and loads of leftist commentators on YouTube have pointed out, it wasn't the Mexicans that took your job. It wasn't the Chinese that took your job. It wasn't the Indians that took your job. It was your employers decided they could make more money if they just shipped your job overseas. And then they said, yeah, fuck it. And overseas went your jobs. Yes. It's like, don't blame the Chinese, don't blame the Indians, don't blame the Mexicans. It wasn't them that took your jobs. Somebody took your job and handed it to them because they were cheaper.
Yeah. And just interesting.
That's how it works for everybody.
I actually, I was having a talk, it was about 2-3 years ago. Actually, it was when I was in Perth there, living in Perth in Western Australia before I moved over here. I talked to a Chinese national, and he was really good on a lot of things. He was a big supporter of the CPC. I loved his homeland, which is understandable. Anyway, but because we talked about this job losses, and because obviously I told about the remarks we get, oh yeah, the Chinese are taking our jobs, and he had a laugh, and he says exactly what you pointed out there. He says, why aren't you actually developing anger towards your employers? They're the ones who made the decision to rip out your jobs out of here, taking them home to not just China, I mean Singapore, Bhutan, India, anywhere around the world, and looking for cheap sources of labour so they can increase their profits. There was no argument. And he said, we in China just scratch our heads at you Australians. It's just like, they blame us for this, that, and we haven't done anything at all. It's just your governments and your bosses have just been destroying your environment. You've been allowing it all. And when someone says, oh, but this company's owned by the Chinese, are doing what they want, he goes, in China, we wouldn't allow them, even regardless of if they're foreign-owned or directly Chinese-owned, allow them to get away with what they are doing there. And so regardless, he just scratched his head. And he actually asked the question, why didn't the population do anything about it? Where was the mobilisations? Where else? And I said, it was actually a very good point, because it would have been about 3-4 years ago, we had a rally, or probably actually longer, a few years ago in Perth there, against the Trans-Pacific Partnerships agreement, or free trade agreements for the Pacific Rim. And we were lucky to get about, and actually I remember that because there was mass rallies in New Zealand there in Auckland. There were thousands of people out in the streets. But here in Australia, in Perth, a population of say about 2.5 million alone, we can only get about like a couple of thousand to a rally. And when people complained about things, I said, well, hey, where were you when all these rallies were called and everything else? And instead of whinging about things and complaining, why were you mobilising with us and having community, having your neighbours, your family and everything else? This affects everybody. So there's a lot to, well, I said, it was a great discussion over this Chinese national. I said, we're even ourselves, well, what the hell were we doing? What the hell were we thinking? Just standing back idly by. I remember actually one job I was on.
I just wanted to add to that. As Michael Hudson, who's a Marxist economist, has pointed out, it's not just issues with people borrowing money that they can't pay back. It's an issue with the person on the other end lending money that they know they probably shouldn't. This is the same kind of issue. It's like, and it leads to one of the reasonable criticisms of China that could be made, which is China has a very strong policy that's hands off. You run your country, we run ours. And that seems like a very sensible, good policy. Excellent. But it does sometimes mean that they will end up putting out an effect that's not good. So they'll say, hey, we want to buy however many million tons of soybeans. Very sensible. And then somebody on the international market will say, hey, we'll sell you soybeans. And they'll go, sweet, we'll buy those soybeans. And then they burn down the Amazon rainforest in order to temporarily farm some soybeans. But because the Chinese have a very hands-off policy, you run your country the way you like, we'll run it our way. As a side effect of that, you end up with the Chinese being hands-off, who then end up aiding regimes in countries that aren't good, because you run your country your way, none of our business. And it could be argued that that's maybe not a good thing. Now, the landlord has decided to pick now on a weekend to come round and do an inspection, and I'm the only one who knows what's going on. So would we be able to just pause this for a second? And I'll run off for like 5 minutes and just rattle off a few things and then run back.
Is that okay? All right, folks, we'll just pause for a few minutes. We'll be back in about five minutes or so.
Okay, cheers. I'll be back in a sec.
We're back. Okay, we're back in just from that short little interlude. Just on that, funny talking about landlords just for a sec there. I remember one time, this place in Perth, the guy, I mean,
I was right.
A lovely guy. It was my landlord. I mean, he owned the house and all that, and where I was out the back of this little granny flat there, you come and collect the rent, but I had the old Dead Kennedy song on, Let's Leech the Landlord, and he looked at me with a bit of a shock horror because he was, listen, I said, no, not you, you're a nice bloke. That's it. So
it is interesting. It's like, unfortunately, even the nice landlords, even the good landlords are part of a system of exploitation, and so, just like the nice boss, he's still ripping you off, even if he's nice. It's like, same here. But
No, I actually did develop friendly relations with him, but I thought, ooh, I was probably stretched the friendship a little bit too far there playing that side when he sort of looked at horror in his face. But yeah, so we were talking about, we're talking about the relation with China, floating about China and the effects on our country about the hands-off policy. It's interesting, you know that because, for example, when I was in the Pilbara for 3 years, I was organising the union. And also, China actually plays a big role economically for the Western Australian economy with mining and resource, oil, gas, iron ore, etc. Just especially from the 2000s onwards, obviously there was a massive construction boom. They call it the mining boom. It was actually a construction/mining boom. With a lot of investment from China. Now, Rio Tinto have been one of the biggest iron ore providers. You're right. China's got a hands-off process. Like, say, for example, Rio Tinto or BHP, Fortescue Metal Group, Roy Hill, the 4 big players there in the Pilbara. And I don't know if you heard over there in NZ, but the Rio Tinto originally blew up a sacred Indigenous site. As tens of thousands of years old, probably goes back, sacred going back 60, 70,000 years. It was old.
I have heard something about that, but I'm not sure if it was that specific one or yet another abuse of the local population.
Well,
which abuse are we talking about?
Yeah, and it was deplorable. They actually knew about it and everything else, but obviously they let the depth charges go, and obviously, and where they let it off the charges, destroyed the cave and all this other part that was regarded as sacred to the local Indigenous group that's been on that land for tens of thousands of years. Now that caused a big outcry. Now going on, and rightfully so, there was rallies in Perth about that, and it was during the Black Lives Matters, during the height of that, and still continuing as well. What was interesting, what would you actually interesting point there? Because what I've actually stated about what the mining resource sector does, they actually got contracts with China to obviously export X amount of tons to China every year. So with 3 billion tons or whatever it is. I'll just use 100,000 tons a year. Now, what Rio has to do, for example, is once a mine's mined out, they have to actually look on a new lease where to mine another ore body to start that, to keep that, to fulfill their contract. So obviously, that's what they do. They wind up blowing tops off what we call mesas, which is Spanish for table, or mesas. They've small hills, or that they blow them up to dig out more iron ore or valleys, etc., like that. So constantly the environmental impact on that. The Pilbara is intensely hot, and that it can be quite desolate in some areas. That's also got its beauty, but it's a very ancient ecosystem there as well. So any disruptions in that will be destroyed. Yet China's hands off. No, all they want is their 3,000, 100,000 tons a year. That's where contracts have been fulfilled of iron ore, etc. But you're right, the negative consequences is the destruction of the land. And same with the gas sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it going either way. It's like, I put in an order for however many thousand tons of metal. I didn't say go off and murder a whole bunch of people and destroy the environment to get it. I just asked for some metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it on me that you turned out to be a nutcase?
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, it's like, true, not really your fault. But then the flip side of the coin is if you weren't incentivizing them, then they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
But then you have to look at, okay, what else would they be doing if they weren't selling it to you? Would they then blow the top off the mountain and then sell it to America or something? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is one of the criticisms, because I'm reasonably confident that given the size of the Chinese market, if the Chinese government said, hey, look, we'll take your iron ore, but only if you mine it responsibly and don't go around blowing up sacred sites, I'm pretty confident that if that was the case, they would be able to force the mining companies to stop being assholes.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a mining exec, so maybe that wouldn't work. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you've got some power, it kind of is good to be responsible in how you use it. And I think the Chinese hands-off approach is probably part of their old strategy of to paraphrase a bit, just keeping their heads down and hoping that the West will overlook them some more.
Yeah.
And that worked. That worked brilliantly. You know, China was this country that you never heard about. It's just where you got cheap stuff from up until just now. Now the Yanks have finally woken up to, no, they're not turning into a liberal democracy. No, they're not going to let us loot all their stuff. Yes, they are powerful.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah,
And they finally caught on, and it's too late now. So it's like, okay, there's no way in God's green earth they can beat the Chinese. They would have to launch nukes at them, and if they do that, the Chinese have got enough nukes to end the USA.
Yeah.
So that's not a win for anybody.
And so, look, Deng Xiaoping think that is hide your along the line of, there was a quote he said in one of his books, I think he's volume 3, the works of Deng Xiaoping. He says, yeah, don't hide your strength and get on what you have to do, then reveal at a particular time. And that's what China's cleverly done. They hid their strength, and now, holy moly, and for US capitalists, we can't exploit you. You want win-win situations with other countries. And a lot of countries are, especially amongst developing nations, are jumping on board with China because they are seeing a lot more beneficial for them to jump on board with China than it would happen to be the US. But the way the US policy was basically pillage and plunder and destroy everything in their own countries, infrastructure, and cause them mass heartache, grief through starvation and poverty, etc. When China said, we'll build you up. We'll build you up and stabilise, etc. So it's good.
Well, that's the difference. That's the difference between whatever you want to call the Chinese approach and imperialism. It's like, to boil it all down, the Chinese want strong neighbours so that those neighbours don't get taken over by imperialists, but also have a market with which they can trade.
Exactly.
But if they were imperialists, these Chinese, they would make slightly more profit, smashing and destroying everything and turning everybody into a client state. But that's not the way they do things, because they're not run by the capitalists. Capitalists do exist in China, but they aren't the ones lobbying Congress or the equivalent thereof. So the Chinese Communist Party, or the Communist Party of China, more correctly, have the option to take the long view. They can invest in things that pay off in the long term. And that's a big difference. People don't get that. You see all these, workosos online, yay, Dusty, going on about, the Chinese are just as imperialist as the Americans. It's like, no, they're not. When you look at the like Sri Lankan ports or the Iranian ports or whatever, it turns out, no, it wasn't an American-style debt trap. It was them falling down on the job and the Chinese giving them a way out by basically taking over part ownership of the port.
Yeah.
It would be an American-style debt trap if they then claimed the port for 200 years and took all the profits from it, as opposed to still building up the area and taking a portion of the profits as a payment. That's trade. That's not imperialism. There is a difference. But so many people on the left just don't dig into it, and they just read what they're told and go, oh my God, the Chinese are just as bad. We're replacing, the red, white, and blue imperialists with the red imperialists. Why are we even bothering? And it's like, no, there's a real difference. And as it happens, I have spoken to a couple of comrades in Africa about how people on the ground, the actual workers, how they see the Chinese. And the thing is, there's going to be somebody in a country that gets screwed over. But generally, from the two that I've spoken to, they love China. They're Africans. They're used to being exploited and they hate it, but there's nothing they could do. But when China comes along, they do the same sorts of things. They offer to buy the iron ore or the coal or the whatever it is, but they pay a fair going market rate, unlike what the extractive imperialists do. And the difference is incredible. It's like 10 times as much money. And the Chinese are still making a profit out of this. The various companies or the state-owned enterprises or whatever, they're still making a profit. Yeah. But they're paying a reasonable amount. And the difference it makes is unreal. And they will build the road to the mines and to the ports and whatever, and they'll let you keep them. Whereas if they were imperialists, they would force you to privatize it and then force you to pay the rent on that and just extract every possible dollar they possibly could. Whereas the Chinese go, no, infrastructure's for you. That's important. That builds you up. That gives your people a stake in things, a way of improving their lives. And we will take some profit from the iron ore, the coal, the whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
And a lot of people just can't see past that. They go, oh, it looks the same on the outside, so it must be. It's like, no, the box is the same. I give you money, you give me resources, but the actual result is wildly different.
Exactly. Exactly. And the fact is, I mean, look, we've got Chinese investment here in Australia. It's no brainer they've done. I mean, they've got either share ownership or own a majority share ownership in Darwin Port. They've got CITIC Pacific Mining in Western Australia, it's another iron ore mine there, and Carrara Mining Limited, which is half Chinese owned, half Australian. And obviously they actually do own some cattle, and what do you call cotton? That's what I was just thinking. Their cotton plantations, and when there's especially from the extreme right or the right conservative side, ultra right, whatever we want to call them, they there's always look at all the Chinese buying up our land, and they own all this property in the inner cities and stuff. Well, actually look at the amount of Chinese ownership in Australia. It's actually quite small. I think about 2% if you're lucky, at the very most. Where most of foreign ownership is British, American, Japanese, yes, Japanese, some Korean as well, I'm led to believe, and also European, like German, French, France, second, they own large swathes of land. Rio Tinto is not an Australian company. It's originally British.
Well, the thing is that ties into what we were saying before. The Chinese aren't coming over buying up all your land.
No.
Somebody is selling all your land, and lo and behold, the Chinese are willing to buy it.
Yeah.
It's like, don't blame the Chinese for buying stuff, blame the person who's selling it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the other interesting point when you about blaming people, because when they say about the Chinese causing this, I said, well, the Chinese are not coming in here with guns. They didn't come in here with a gun to their head. They didn't bring the People's Liberation Army over here, invaded us, put the guns to our head. Right, we're taking your jobs, we're taking this. We're actually, in fact, we're going to take your whole country. Go. They didn't do that. At all. And interesting, when the Chinese flag's been flown in some places, like be it in a business or be it the embassy, there's this outcry of things. And I thought, well, one, China's never been at war with Australia, not once. We've actually, they've never attacked us by any means. They never created anything. And unfortunately, too, in this country, we've got a lot of systematic racism as well. Of course, both Indigenous, especially Indigenous, but also Chinese. It goes right back to the 1800s when the first Chinese traders came over, but also later on in the goldfields as well. A lot of racial discrimination towards them. They were treated with suspicion, etc. And even up to the modern thing, and even when I was in high school, people of any of Asian descent, or it doesn't matter if it's China or wherever, it could be from Japan, Korea, etc. Calling horrible names, and I just thought that's just horrible. There was nothing funny about it. I found it appalling. In my youth, actually, there in high school, I had it was also a bit of rebellion against that, but also too, I became good friends with someone who was of Chinese Malay descent. Quite, he was great. So everything else was a bit of a shock horror. Like, how dare you young Anglo white kid, at the time associating with Asian people. And at times I'd be vocal about it. I'd rather associate with them and some of the white people I know, because the fact is, it's just the obnoxiousness they go on with it. I thought I'd rather go hang out with pleasant people, if you know what I mean, than obnoxious people. So,
I think this ties into one of the things that was on our list of things to talk about, which was how people see what they want to see. Confirmation bias, I think it's officially called, where when you're primed to see a thing, you will look for evidence of that thing and ignore any evidence against it. And it's not even really a choice. It's literally you almost don't see the things that you need to see. One of the stories I was going to give is there's another group I'm a member of, Singularity Club, which is all focused on, emerging technologies, sci-fi type stuff, where humanity might go from here, that kind of thing. And one of our members, who I shall not name, regularly travels to China. So you would think that they would be more clued up on the goings on in China than your average person, because they don't just go there for a trip, 2 weeks every 3 years kind of thing. They spend months and months there. But because they are already, to some extent, pre-programmed what to expect from China, or they're all authoritarian, or they're all oppressive, or whatever, they see kind of what they want to see. So even though you would think they would know better, they talk to somebody who says, oh, you know, or you can't speak out against the party or whatever. And the thing is, whether that's true or not, you will always find somebody in the country who's against the party. I mean, you will find somebody in the US who hates the liberals or who hates the conservatives or whatever. And the thing is, it doesn't make it true. It's just their point of view. And so even in China, where the government has overwhelming support, I think the best poll I ever saw was 95.5% support for the CPC. I don't think there's a Western political party of any stripe that has ever had numbers like that in the history of mankind. So this thing about Pompeo, oh, we love the Chinese, but we hate their party. It's like, no, there is no difference. They are one and the same.
Exactly.
But the thing is, even with that in mind, you know, this one person has gone to China on several occasions. They hang out with people, and at least one person has said, oh, you can't speak out against the party. Let's ignore the Chinese labor movement. Let's ignore all the, you know, very impressive and good sort of freedom of speech type things that the CPC does. No, they're just the authoritarian and oppressive, and my mate in China told me, so it's true. It's like, okay, I'm sure there's a minimum of one person that says that, but it doesn't make it accurate. It just means it's that person's take on things. But they know better because, you know, they didn't read it. This was somebody who told them something. So it must be, you know, God's honest truth. Therefore, China is all authoritarian and repressive, even though they have never experienced any authoritarianism or repression. They just have a mate who told them based on who knows what, a bad experience or getting yelled at by a cop for being an idiot. Who knows? And so, you know, even though people should theoretically be in a position to know better, they still end up not doing so because humans are a mess. I mean, we suck at figuring out what's really going on. I mean, come on. People, the argument is often, well, I've got a mate who lives in that country and they know what's going on. It's like, yeah, there are people who live in the States and they think Trump is great.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there are people who live on a round Earth and somehow think it's flat.
Yeah.
Just because you live there doesn't make you right about it. It just means you're an idiot. Yeah, and I think it does also play into something that I've posted about online a little bit on occasion. The role of ego in propaganda. There's this idea that people have that, and it's wrong. So let me just state that up front. The only stupid people fall for propaganda, and we like to think of ourselves as smart, switched on folks, whether we're leftists or not, whether we're smart or stupid, it doesn't matter. We all think we're above average in terms of brain power, even when it's wildly not true. But the thing is, because only stupid people fall for propaganda, and I'm not a stupid person, therefore, what I think must be true. It can't be the result of propaganda. So therefore, whatever I've got going on in my head is true. And so people, when you try to say to somebody, hey, look, that's government spin. That's Mike Pompeo talking out his ass. That's, you know, insert leader of other country here who hates China at the moment talking out of his ass. It then becomes an ego defense. You're not just saying, hey, maybe you've been misled. You're saying on some level to that person, you're an idiot. You're nowhere near as smart as you think you are. And so then they have to dig in and defend the propaganda that they've been fed. Because if they admitted, yeah, I got fooled, because we've all been fooled, then they would have to admit to themselves, oh, I'm not quite as smart as I thought I was. And so that's why you get people, even leftists, who really should know better. You know, they'll tell you, yep, the Bay of Tonkin, that was like a complete fabrication to get us in the Vietnam War. Yeah, the weapons of mass destruction and Saddam Hussein, that was all lies. You know, the 9/11 thing, yeah, all of the terrorists came from Saudi Arabia, but we attacked, you know, other countries like Iraq or whatever. It's like, yeah, that was all true. That was all true. But this propaganda about the enemy of the day, China now, that bit's all true. And it's like, you should know better. But, you know, it's so difficult to tell them because you have to have a person who's willing to be humble enough to say, yeah, I got sucked in. again. I got food, again. And that's hard. That's a level of emotional maturity a lot of us allegedly grown-up people just don't have.
Yeah. And especially,
And
yeah, go on, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, and so it's important to remember that and not just get angry at people or call them stupid, because we've all been there. Most of us weren't born leftists. We had to slowly discover that the horrors and the depths of imperialism, the lies that we've been fed from the get-go, and then use our critical thinking, or even learn how to think critically and then use it to then go, okay, where's this propaganda coming from? Who's lying to me now? What's it all for? And so on. That's a hard thing to do. And so even though we might get upset at people who have fallen for the propaganda and are yet again repeating it uncritically, we can't be too angry at them, because propaganda works. If it didn't, they wouldn't bother doing it.
That's right. And I mean,
Cool, I'm done. You talk.
Yeah, no, that's right. And actually, too, with the situation with China, believing a lot of the propaganda about them, because what they do is play on people's economic fears. I mean, I remember the job losses of the 1990s. I entered the workforce in 1989. I was only 16, 17-year-old. And obviously, and that was, even then, there was still a lot of large-scale, big manufacturing plants. I remember the trains in Sydney being packed out with people. And also, come the 1990s, after the recession of the early 90s and everything else, everything going offshore and over a systematic decline and everything. And that had, especially in regional areas as well, had a systematic effect on people. What they got is not just high unemployment, but the other symptoms of that, drug and alcohol abuse, breakdown in society, family, etc., etc. So obviously, that gives, then obviously someone's looking for something to blame for this, and it was an easy thing to do, to scapegoat, the deep dark empire of China. Here's that, not us. We support you and everything else, not real, not trying. And you're right. It's going to take a lot of education to explain to people. It's
also emotional maturity.
Yeah.
I mean, to look inside and say, yeah, maybe I stuffed up, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah,
that's hard. People don't like that. It's painful. It's so much easier to go, it's your fault. You did this to me. And because then I never have to look at myself. I never have to feel that I was a wrong person, you know? And we all know it. You know, anybody I'm not a parent, but I've seen kids and I've seen people who are parents interacting with their kids. And you'll see it every time. It's like when the kid gets caught doing something wrong, stealing a cookie or whatever, they will always try to pin it on somebody else. Whether it's their imaginary friend or their brother or the kid next door or whatever, they'll always try, and it never works. But yet, even though in theory we're all adults, we're still stuck in that mindset of, no, it wasn't me, it's you guys, and just pointing those fingers out instead of pointing them back and going, yeah, maybe I stuffed up, my bad.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It also does, and you're right about taking a level of maturity there, because it is hard to admit they're wrong. I think a lot of people don't like admitting that they're wrong. It's for them, it's quite humiliating. It's their pride or whatever it is. And it's actually, no, it's just like, to me, it's actually being human being. We're not human doings, we're human beings. And it's like, yeah, we stuff up. We make big mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've done things that I regret as well doing. Everyone does on this planet. And, you know, and I completely blew up a lot of things and that and stuff, a lot of relations over the years and everything else. But the thing is, it's one thing. It's one thing when you get, you know, try and blame others and instead of blaming and everything else. It's like, well, what was my role in all this? And realise, well, actually, I stuffed up. I was wrong, and admit that. And but it's the best way to learn, because as we're talking about China, as Chairman Mao said, the best lessons learned are the hard ones. And as long as we have to, because otherwise it's the old form of insanity. We keep doing the same thing over and over and over, trying to achieve a different result. And
I think it's one of the good things that we can take from Christianity. It's like, I'm not a believer, but there are some good things in any given religion. You could argue as to how much good and how much bad. That's fine. But one of the good things that is still found in most common Christianity, maybe not so much the big mega churches in the US or whatever, is that acceptance that we all stuff up and that we all need forgiveness. And if we can extrapolate that out into, you know, we're all comrades. We're all going to make mistakes. We've all come from a place of thinking the bad things or doing the bad things, and that it is possible to forgive and learn better.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's the thing we should definitely take away and keep, whether we happen to be believers or not. Just accepting that we can be flawed human beings and that we can make the mistakes and that we can learn better from them and move on.
Exactly.
I think that's part and parcel of the difference between left thinking and right thinking. Above and beyond everything else, I think when you look at arguments for economic policies, when you look at arguments for, you know, how we should do things, for the most part on the left, there seems to be an attitude, a good attitude, that we are going to mess up, we are going to fail, we are going to end up at the bottom of the heap at some point in our lives. Whether we stay there or not is another story. And so we should build the society, we should build the systems with that in mind, so that we should lift the bottom up, because it may be us that's at the bottom one day, and we might need the things that we've built. Whereas when you look at the right-hand side of things, as exemplified by the Americans, but you know, other right-wing groups do this as well. The attitude is, I want to build things so that the people at the top of the heap have all the good stuff, and then I want to be one of those people, ignoring the manifest fact that 99.9% of people are never going to be at the top of the heap. And I think that's what people forget, is that you need to build the system so that if you're the one at the bottom of the pile, it's still okay. It's still good for you. You still get to have a life, and not just build a tight pyramid with, you know, all the wealth, all the good stuff going to the top and sod everybody else, and then hoping that you get to be one of those people. It's like, maybe you might get lucky, but you know, look at the numbers. It's never really realistically going to happen. You might win the lottery, but doesn't mean you will. And I think that's probably the key difference, is just building things with the acceptance that we may be the ones that stuff up or fail, versus the hope that it won't be you that it happens to. And yeah, that's never going to happen. I think that's why you get all these Trump supporters. They're all like, yeah, rich people should have more money. Yeah, screw the poor people. Plus, I now want to be one of the rich people. It's like, good, they don't want you, and you don't get to make that choice. So maybe you should vote in terms of policies that actually help you where you are now. And if you get better, hooray.
I'd ask that question to those Trump supporters. Why would they want to support someone that goes against their class interests? Obviously, okay, I did this talk the other day, and obviously, when I was actually talking with Dust James as well, we do it Sunday morning with the reading of the 3 internationals. Now, what actually, you know, what was Trump so appealing to working class people? I'm not surprised there was some coloured working class people as well, and he actually touched on their economic concerns. Basically, they're the root cause of it, you know, because these people have seen all their steel mills closed down, big plants moving to wherever overseas or Mexico, and it was, you know, he touched on that, and finally it was just like, oh, the working class people, it was like someone's finally listening. We weren't getting anywhere with the Democrats. Finally, someone's come along. He's not part of the established political elite. He's bombastic and everything else. He just says it as is. People loved it. They lapped it up. What the thing is actually also understanding too, Trump's an entertainer, millionaire. He learned that he did that reality show, The Apprentice. You know, you're fired, and people loved it. And so he knew how to entertain as well and whip them up.
Well, I think Caleb touched on that in the in a talk that he gave. Not the one with Dust, but in a different one. One that he got a lot of shit for, because he stood up and said, "Hey, look, you know, I don't like Trump, but a lot of the stuff he said was true. Like, Trump is a liar, no argument there. But the things he said when he was trying to get elected the first time were true. He was saying, you're getting screwed. He was saying the elites are running off with all the money. He was saying, you know, all the manufacturing jobs have disappeared and that sucks. That was true. And Caleb said, you know, I applauded because finally somebody is saying the things. Doesn't mean he likes Trump. And Trump, as we have discovered, even if we'd never met him before, is a liar. But the things he was talking about at the time were true. Just because they came out of the mouth of Trump doesn't make them wrong. And that's it's not necessarily a bad thing to recognize when a bad guy says something that is actually correct.
Yeah.
As we since discovered, yeah, he never had any intention of doing those things. And I think that's why Trump got so much support, because while he had no intention of following through and was a liar,
Yeah.
the things he was addressing were the real concerns of real people. People who were saying, he was telling people, you're getting screwed. That's true. They were getting screwed. The reasons they were getting screwed were not the reasons that he came up with, but he was right about the screwing part. And he spoke to that. But he also, a lot of liberals will just declaim Trump is racist and just stop talking there. But he did also speak to that part of people, that reactionary part, that pointing the finger part, where it's easier to blame somebody else than to look at the actual reasons, some of which you may be complicit in. Nobody likes to admit that they had some small part in the way things have gone horribly wrong. And we as adults must accept that if we are part of a system that has done something horribly wrong, then we have to accept some possibly small responsibility for having let it get to that situation. Why didn't we get in the streets? Why didn't we go rioting before this point?
Yes.
You can't blame humans too much. We are evolved from the monkeys that only moved at the last possible second, because the monkey that ran around panicking every 5 seconds, that monkey ran out of steam, and when it came time to run from the tigers, they were knackered and they got eaten. So it's part of evolution. But that having been said, we can still do our best.
Exactly. And
try to counter that a bit.
Yeah, and I think actually something up about Trump, and actually another interesting point Trump did point out too, about being all this foreign intervention in the Middle East and Afghanistan, etc. And when he came out, this is completely dumb. Even when he came out and says, well, we got our troops in other countries and they can quite easily, they should step up, Mark, and defend themselves anywhere. And that sort of resonated. Even some of the people that were on the anti-imperialist end, I thought, all right. Even some of those people in those living in those countries, I thought, good, you pull the US troops out of here. Did he do that? No. Actually, when I spoke with Dust about this last, we were talking about this on the live chat last week. He's a walking contradiction. Because because the discussion got about fascism, which was part of the Free International. We're talking about.
Actually, I just want to jump in there for a second. Walking contradiction. I think that's a strength of his, because if you've ever interacted with religious types who usually use the Bible, so Christians, online, because the Bible says yes and no, it says up and down, it says good and bad. You can then use it to say any damn thing you want. And that's the thing. Trump says yes and no. He says up and down. He says big and small. You can then read anything you want out of what he says, because he says everything. So you can say, hey, I think up, he's supporting me. I think down, he's supporting me. His contradiction is actually a strength in this horrible mess. Because you can read anything you want out of Trump. You can just find a speech of Trump where he says, I support whatever this thing you care about is. And it's like, yep. And of course, there's that whole rejection of the super wokeness. It's like, because the Democratic Party, and I suspect to a lesser extent, similar parties in other countries, have embraced sort of woke culture, because if we are arguing about Black Lives Matter and pronouns and stuff, as important as those things are, we're not arguing about class politics. Sorry. We're not arguing about why are people getting screwed. And so that's a safe topic for the liberals, for the Democratic Party, for their equivalent in other countries. Because whether Black Lives Matter or not, whether we have laws respecting people's pronouns or not, whether we have laws respecting reproductive rights or not, those are not things that affect the overall massive economy. So they are safe to dick around with, which is why you get the Democratic Party and their equivalents in other countries playing silly buggers with these woke politics, because whether they win or they lose, it's not affecting the base. They're just playing silly buggers up here in the superstructure, and the base is not changing. It's safe. That's why they're so focused on it, because it doesn't matter if they win or lose. They can look like the good guys. They can make a big show of, we care, but we're never going to enact policies that actually change the power structure at all.
Yes.
And so it's safe. It's a safe distraction, because if they win, it doesn't change the power structure. If they lose, it doesn't change the power structure, and they can promise to do more of it next time.
And actually, you hit right on that about the economic base and the superstructure there. And I think it's quite important. And I do find a lot of people on the left as well fail to see this as the economic basis that has to change in order to change the superstructure, not the other way around. Although, I will say this is very important that we do run candidates in elections and put the voice out there and some demands and a finding program forward. But the thing is, it goes back to what's primary and what's secondary, and it's the economic base that determines the superstructure, which influences the economic basis again. And I think it's vitally important we look at something like that, changing it. And as I mentioned at the start of this, when you were also introducing yourself, basically about doing some of these basic organising was ground. I mentioned earthwork about setting up worker cooperatives, and actually, Professor Richard Wolf actually talks extensively on. I like his programs. He's brilliant. And I know a lot of comrades in the past sort of disregarded worker cooperatives. They're not the solution. Well, no. Well, this is where they sort of they missed the point completely. They are part of the change of the economic basis. They're a step in the right direction. They're a progressive way forward, if you want to put it in that language. We have to change it, and it helps those workers understand that it's like Marx actually said. He was looking at what was happening on in the factory, not necessarily what was outside. He realised what was happening on, because when we talk about democratic rights and everything, well, we don't have democratic rights at work. If you tell the boss to what you honestly think of him, or him or her, whatever, you're out the door pretty quickly. It's basically their way or the highway attitude. And so, and it's we're want to talk about working control of industry and that. And Caleb was brilliant about he talked about nationalisation, and certain industries should have. And ideally, we'd be turning other enterprises into worker co-ops. And that actually, once workers have got much more hands-on control of what they produce and how they run it, they've got a lot more interest in running things themselves instead of being totally alienated from what's produced and how everything's run. Now they've got a lot more control. And interesting, I
think there's a very simple and real way to sell that to people, because everybody's had experience with it at some stage, especially if they are part of a company that has been picked up by a larger company or whatever. Any worker will know for sure that when they were part of a small company, then the people who were doing the work were the people who knew what was going on. And when their boss was working at the mine or working at the factory or working at the farm, he was right there or she was right there, and they could say, what's going on? Hey boss, you need to know this thing. So when the control's local, the business is smart because the people in charge are right there. And so they are invested, they're connected, they know what's going on. Whereas when they get bought up by some massive corporation and head office is in the capital city 1,000 miles away or in the US or whatever, then you don't have that feedback. You don't have that, hey boss, these rules that you gave us are stupid, they need to change because of local conditions. It's like, no, head office doesn't care. You can't talk to them and they're not listening. You lose that agility. You lose that local control. And with a worker co-op or something similar, worker self-directed enterprise, you get all of that good stuff. You get all of that. The knowledgeable people who are at the coalface are the ones who are in charge. And so you get much more of a case of the company doing what it needs to do, rather than the company doing what somebody who their entire knowledge of your business is they read a line on a spreadsheet. That person's not going to be making really detailed, really finely tuned discussions about policy and what needs to be done. They're just going to be like, yeah, this line needs to go up, do more of column B, go. And that's it. Whereas if you're part of a small company, you can say, hey boss, yeah, that idea you came up with last week about how we need to do more of that, it's not going to work because of this thing you forgot about and this thing and our supplier over here. And they go, shit, you're right. That is a good point. You don't get that with a big company, but you do with the worker co-op and you do with the small regular company.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it all wins out.
So, and I think actually too in Victoria with the development of what Earthwork is doing, it's actually quite exciting. And I really believe that with there's green shoots appearing around, well, not just in this country, but around the world. I think it's, well, that's just a figure of speech I use, but I've found green shoots. But if there's other workers that are taking over factories and stuff, that's ought to be really supported and developed further. We're going too far off track. I remember many years ago, back in the 2000s, there was a movement in Argentina because their economy just crashed big time. People lost money, couldn't access money, and that, and factories closed up. And what it started off, I think, with a tiling company. Basically, lost left, but the workers decided, oh well, get the bolt cutters out. We're reopening the factory and running it themselves. And after big street battles and stuff, the government put legislation in place. Well, if a company decides to go bust or close down and move offshore, whatever, well, the workers have got the right to run it. To take it over and run it, and then they've got the support. And actually, I think that should be a good demand from even for the left people on the left to put that forward. So, well, if a company,
it also has backing. You mentioned Wolf before, and one of the things he talks about is the Marcora law in Italy, where where the government will aid them in making a co-op. I think there's a few other countries where they have a same sort of rule, where if a company goes bust, then the workers can take it over. I know the UK used to have a very similar kind of rule in regards to housing and squatting. I don't know if that's the case anymore, and I haven't been in the UK in a long time, so I can't say. But there was a rule where if the place was abandoned or untenanted or whatever, and you had successfully lived there for X amount of time, it was yours. There are details around that, but that is essentially what it boiled down to. Because there was an acknowledgement back in the day, before everything went to neoliberal hell, that housing was a right. And if you had found some way to make it work, then you had established your claim to the territory, as it were. Now, I strongly suspect that has been squashed recently, or at least in the last decade or so, just because the people on the other side of the fence are not complete idiots. They can see the way things are going, and when there's more empty houses than there are houseless people, it doesn't take a genius to work out. Someone's just going to basically take over, and so they will have put a law into effect to stop that. So I bet that's gone now.
Yeah, look, I haven't paid too much attention to that the last few years in this country. I wouldn't be surprised we've got something similar in place now. I mean, years ago, actually, this happened in Sydney. There was one particular place, I think in the inner city suburb of Marrickville. It was actually just banded there. It was obviously a deceased estate, but no one moved in. But a group of people got together, moved in, and actually they fixed the place up and did a marvelous job. It was not to be a party house or whatever. None of that. It was just a
living place
to reside. They formed my own little, say, housing cooperative, if you want to put it that way. Everything was fixed up, and actually did a wonderful job. Nice garden and everything, and that. They got the electricity and power switched on. They actually lived there for a number of years until finally someone came around, or some authority from the government. Oh, hang on, wasn't this a deceased estate? By then, too late. So actually, they did allow them to stay there. There was some sort of court challenge about it, but no, they allowed them to stay. They've actually looked after the property, everything. So they stayed there.
Well, I think it gets to become a win when it's not only not good publicity to go against them, but it's also easier not to. I think if you can set it up so that it's easier for the other side to just let you get away with whatever it is you're doing, then that's how you're going to win. Because if it's more, I mean, in many cases, the corporate types will spend more money than they will get back in order to crush something, simply because it's worth it in terms of sending a message, or it's worth it in terms of some other motivation that you don't know about, like, oh, we can write this off as a maintenance expense rather than a business expense, or that kind of stupid bookkeeping shit. But if you can arrange it so that it not only looks good for the other side, but also is easier for them, then you stand a far higher chance of getting away with whatever it is you're doing.
Mm.
I mean, if they turned it into a drug den, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Because then they would have said, oh, local council, look at the terrible mess that they've made here. We've got to put a stop to it. Regardless of the fact that just because you don't like the way somebody else is living, it doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah.
It just means you don't want to live that way. And that's fine. I might not enjoy living in a tent, but if somebody else wants to live in a tent, go for them. You know, none of my business.
Yeah, and exactly, you know, because obviously the capitalist class, they can't make money out of it. They'll do everything they can to put the brakes on any sort of progressive movement to do that. And obviously, I wouldn't surprise that laws have changed in the respective states here in Australia to change that in order for property developers and everything else to make more money out of it. Because that would be even that, just something small scale like I described, is still a threat to capitalist order. Well, how dare you? Housing, I mean, how dare you do that? That's just going to drive down, well, we can't make profit out of this anymore. How dare you? So we'll have to get something in place. All right, for now, you guys can live there, but no, from now on, no more.
It's interesting though, because just from telling you that story about the rights that squatters had in the UK, it kind of makes me feel old, because it harkens back to a time when clearly it was recognized that housing is a human right.
Yeah.
Even if I mean, you know, there's nothing brilliant about the laws of the UK, but they do come from an older time that wasn't a neoliberal hellscape, and many of the laws are left over from a time before capitalism. And so feudalism gets a hell of a lot of shit, but in many ways it was more humane than what we've got now. I mean, everybody kinda, to some extent, lived on a farm. Everybody kinda owned the means of production to some extent. X number of days were given over to the Lord, where you go work in the Lord's field, and that was how you paid for everything. But when you weren't doing that, you went back to the farm. That farm was to some extent yours, and that would keep you alive. And so some of the laws are left over from that time that recognize that thing, that implicitly recognize that housing is a human right. It's only when under capitalism that got commodified and it got changed. So now it's like, oh, you've got to pay for it. It's like, well, what if I can't pay for it? You die, I guess, but oh well. It's like, and the thing is, although automation doesn't really feed into real estate, it's probably the one thing that automation isn't going to impact. It does neatly highlight the changes, because you can use automation to make buildings more cheaply, but there's still commodities to some extent.
Yes.
And it does feed into one of the things you mentioned before that you want to talk about is the crisis of capitalism. And one of the things that people are becoming aware of, but they're not realizing how much it changes things, is how automation is changing things. Anybody who watches this, I strongly recommend you look up a channel called CGP Grey and a video called Humans Need Not Apply.
Okay.
Basically, it details how industrialization changed things. And one of the things it tells a story from the point of view of horses, which might seem very strange. But one of the things it points out is there is nothing in industrialization that says that these new conditions will make more and better things for horses. And horses were the workers back then. So it's a cute little story, and it's nicely animated, but it has a story of two horses talking about how the change to industrialization is going to come. And one horse is saying, oh, you know, there's all these good things, there'll be new jobs for us to do, you know, now that we're not hauling, you know, coal carts back on the forwards, there'll be new jobs for us. And as he quite rightly points out, there's nothing in the new system that says it's going to make new and better jobs for horses. We're the horses. You know, when your job as a truck driver, and this bleeds into dust, can be replaced by an automated truck that is never going to get tired, never going to get bored, never going to have low blood sugar and some kind of accident as a result, never going to have, you know, a bad breakup or a fight with the kids or whatever, then you're out on your ear. And the thing is, even if you're a boss who loves humans, loves his work crew, you know, would fight and die for them, that guy is going to be pushed out of business by all the other companies that go, yeah, sod the workers, automated trucks are the way to go.
Mm.
And it's the same. In that video, he mentions lawyers getting replaced, doctors getting replaced,
Yes.
not just the McDonald's fast food people, because a lot of the doctor stuff is keeping up with the research, going over the records, and basically looking for problems. And a machine now, or a program, can do all that brilliantly. Like the Dr. Watson program is like grotesquely better at diagnosing people's illnesses from x-rays and a list of problems than almost the best doctors. And so while the cutting edge, the Dr. House type doctors are still better, with this machine they can stamp out 1,000 100,000 doctor equivalents that are 90% as good as Dr. House. And so that's all of those jobs gone away. When you've got like giant 3D printers that can 3D print a house in like a day, it's like, well, there goes half your building staff. You're still going to have a few building staff to put windows in, but as soon as they can automate and the robot installs the windows, those guys are gone. As soon as the robot has a spray nozzle attached to it, there go all your painters. There'll still be, one or two guys who, polish off the rough corners and put the light fittings in or something. But, that's only now. Give it another 10 years and that job will be automated.
Exactly.
Lawn mowers, the guys who come around and mow your lawns and stuff. Well, there's automated lawn mowers you can get. They're expensive, but they're getting cheaper. There's that job goes away. Any job you can think of that isn't, directly human centered, like maybe working in an old folks home, that job's not going to be automated, but it's all going to be replaced. And the thing is, often people forget the systemic issues that go along with that. Like, oh, okay, so our jobs get replaced. Okay, so what? I'll get a new job. Okay, that's cool. Learn to code. Well, if you're lucky, if you're smart and your brain is flexible and it's the right shape of brain, you can learn to code. But not everybody can learn to code. Like, take Dusty. He's obviously smart. That guy's got a brain. But he's a truck driver. He's good at talking to people. He's clearly very smart, very well read. But that doesn't mean that he can learn to code. Maybe he can. Maybe he's too hands-on. He's too practical. He's too interpersonal. He can't get the abstract kind of thinking going for coding. So what's he going to do if all the new jobs are coding? It doesn't matter how smart the guy is. It doesn't matter how good and kind and switched on he is. If he doesn't have the right kind of brain to code, he's never going to be a coder. So what do you do with all the people that don't have the right kind of brain to be a coder? Or what when coding goes away and the next big job comes along that we can't even imagine now? It's going to be an even smaller percentage of the population can even do that job. What do you do with the leftovers?
Exactly, and it's a good question you raised there, because because obviously we're talking about when we're at the moment, manufacturing's back on the agenda here, is being talked about, and obviously there was something on our 7:30 report, which is an ABC channel after the 7 o'clock news. The other night they talked about. I watched it with some interest for once. I haven't watched that program for quite some time. And what they were talking about, yes, they were talking about all this technological change, automation and everything else. And one guy says, "Oh, we need to change the generations now to do this," but not everyone's doing it. And I actually did it. I actually talked to a few union comrades actually about manufacturing coming in this country. I said, "Look, say hypothetically, right? Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Daimler, etc., even Fiat and etc." Size to bring the automotive industry back into Australia. The thing is, we won't see the large-scale car plants like with tens and thousands of workers like we used to right up till about not so long ago. What you'll be seeing is kilometres of machines doing it, and then people behind computer screens. That's all you'll be seeing. You might have some technicians walking the production line. You may have a few production workers, just like you correctly said, finishing off the final touches that before the vehicle finished product goes out. And that's what's going to happen. And I even see it with back, because my trade background is a boilermaker. And even now, it's not so uncommon now to see boilermakers now behind a computer screen or operating a machine that's doing pretty much laser cutting, doing the welding itself, finishing off, you'd have one or two probably trades assistants, like slash labourers at the end there, just finishing off, making sure all the edges are nice and smooth before the product goes out. For those of you who bought a Boilermaker, is a metal fabricator and welder, otherwise known as, and it is so. It's even going right through the trades itself, even through the building trades. I was talking to an official not so long ago from the Construction, Forestry, Mining, Energy Union, the CFMEU, which the construction division looks after the building trades, not of things, carpenters, bricklayers, etc., but also builders, labourers, so on. But I've said, now what I'm seeing on the internet, you've got machines now, and maybe one or two operators operating a machine, putting up a brick wall. You don't have bricklayers there and the brickies labour and all that anymore. You have this machine.
Yeah, and that wall's perfect.
Concrete guttering and all that. It just looked amazing. It was perfect. You know, they could actually put a perfect wall up and all that. The technology that's changing now, even for building, it's not going to be the tens and thousands of workers building something. And also, too, I did have a discussion about, because of the environmental side, about the forestry side of things and old growth forest. But I did have a talk with someone about this sometime, and I think what people are going to understand, we've got to try and save jobs. You know, the old saying, saving jobs with the environmental instead against. I said, no, the big threat to that's all the technology. You don't have thousands of guys with axes going into a forest anymore, logging a forest. You have just one machine going in there, one or two machines. One that pushes the tree over, the next one to grab it, shred it, goes onto the back of a truck, and then straight down to the sawmill. And then
I just want to sort of expand on that. One of the really cool things that I saw recently on a CGTN, which is China Global.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, they're really good, and I watch them regularly just to see positive things coming out of China. And one of the things that they showed was they built a new robot, right? The Chinese are dead good with robots. And the robot that they built was, it's essentially had a long extendable arm, big tracks at the bottom. It was very cool. And a big chunk of machinery like this on the end, must have weighed about 50 kilos. Yeah. And what that chunk of machinery did was about 20 different tools for working with high voltage power lines. And so what would happen is you just go, robot, do the thing, go. And it would go. And it was a big deal because it was driven through the 5G network. I have to give a talk on this later. So I had to look it up. And what it does is basically it can do nearly all of the maintenance and repair tasks by itself without supervision. And it replaces like a gang of 10 highly skilled people. And what it does, the demonstration was it added a splice onto like a 110 kV line. So there's big, massive power cable on a pylon, whatever, and they wanted to have a tap off of that down to a factory. And so they just went, go. And the robot just rolls out to the right place, checks out the line, lines itself up, big arm comes up, clamps on, spin, rips off all the shielding, welds on a new connector, sprays it with coating, seals it all up, done. And so that is a job that would have taken like a team of 10 guys half a day to do. This robot did it with one guy just keeping an eye out, and it did it in 5 minutes. And that was a major industrial job where it was connecting like a 110 kV line to a giant ass factory.
Yeah.
It's like, and it did it in 5 minutes flat. Now, in any country other than China, that would be a fucking disaster. Because that's 10 highly skilled people out of a job.
Yes.
Now, in China, they're still out of a job, but the government will find something else for them to do. Like those 10 guys will then be supervisors for robots, and they will cover 10 times the area and 10 times the work capacity and whatever. They will now be leaders in their industry. They will be teaching the robots. They will be talking to the robot designers to say, hey, look, you know, in my 20 years of experience with 10 kV lines, here's the thing you need to look out for. You should put that in the next robot. And they go, oh, sweet, do that. You won't find that in the West.
No.
And, you know, for all the ultra leftist complaints about, oh, China's not really socialist, it's like, well, bullshit. But in China, this kind of thing happening is a good thing.
Yes.
Because those people can be freed up to do other things. Now, at some stage, China's going to have to make another change. And I think if I remember Xi Jinping talking about this, his plan is, I think, 2035, where they are going to run out of work for people to do. And so I suspect what they're probably going to do is what was talked about in the days of industrial socialism. Michael Hudson talks about this, which is shrink the workday. So I suspect by 2035, you'll discover the Chinese workday is 6 hours.
Yeah,
and then maybe 10 years later after that, it'll be 4 hours or whatever. And these people will have more leisure time and more whatever. And you can do that in a socialist society. Even an imperfect one like China, you can do that because the government can just say, look, here's a problem. Here's a solution. Here's what we're doing. We'll try it in this province first and see how it goes. And then they'll do that for 6 months and they'll go, that worked out really well. We're doing it nationwide. Or they'll go, that didn't work out really well. Let's try this other plan. It's one of the big things that's people think China is just like this imperial empire, but they're not. They're more decentralized than the United States are. They've got all their different districts. They've got local governors, whatever. They can do experiments in real time. The US probably could do this as well. They just won't.
Yeah.
But this also leads into the falling rate of profit. Which is one of the very big, very cool Marxist things.
Just before we do, because what's interesting, the technology under socialism benefits humanity, where technology under capitalism only benefits the capitalists. And what you mentioned here, with all the people being pushed out of work and things have been more of what they call efficiency. This is the end result of what we call capitalist efficiency. Unemployment, poverty, all the symptoms that go with it, everything else. That's capitalist efficiency. The less people producing everything else, but this is the under capitalism also too. This is where this contradiction comes into an antagonism. Who creates value? Because as Marx and Engels correctly point out, labour creates value. So who's creating the value in these products? There'll be all these people out of work, unable to buy everything. So once again, capitalist overproduction. And it's
that was pretty much what I was going to say.
All these millions of cars, or we'll just call it the old classic thing, widgets. So they built squillions of widgets. Yeah, they're great looking widgets, but they're worthless because one, they're not able to buy them, and two, you know, what have we produced all these for? We've got all these robots doing everything, and they're not.
It's like when you get an automated plant that pumps out 1,000 cars a day or something, and it's fully automated, and there's no staff working there. It's like, how are unemployed people going to buy a car?
Exactly. Well, it's going to give them one. Here you go, here's one for free, but that's still, they're not going to make profit.
You know, it works. It works in the early days. You know, you build an automated car plant, 10,000 staff are now reduced to like 10 guys who basically watch a computer and call for repairs when they need it. Okay, cool. Those people go off and find other jobs. Sure, fine. Now, wind the dial forwards. This has happened 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. You have run out of places for those people to go and find other jobs. Now what? Let's pick on Dusty again.
Dusty.
Poor Dusty. Dusty, I love you. Yeah. Anyway, but let's say you've got Dusty. You know, clearly smart guy. Guy's got his shit together, well read. But can he do the new job? You know, is he whatever job comes next that we can't even imagine? Is he an actor? Is he a systems analyst? Is he whatever? You know, these jobs require more and more specific kinds of abilities. Like back in the day, anybody could farm. If you had, 2 arms and 2 legs that worked and both your eyes worked, you could probably get a job on a farm. Maybe you hated it, maybe you loved it, who knows? But you could do the job. And that meant nearly everybody could do that job. Same with early factory work. 2 arms, 2 legs and eyes that work, you can work in a factory. Maybe you hate it, maybe you love it, but you can do the job. Nowadays, the requirements are more and more specific. You've got to be able to code, you've got to be able to talk to people, you've got to be able to understand spreadsheets or mathematical stuff, or, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. Now, maybe you're lucky, maybe you are the smart guy, maybe you do have the right kind of brain to understand facts and numbers and flowcharts and whatever comes next, or abstract concepts about AI, whatever it is. Maybe you're lucky in that way. But what about the people who aren't? And so it doesn't matter how much you try to retrain people or how much you teach people to code. Some percentage of people can't do it. They just don't have the right kind of mindset to it. And it's not even a matter of IQ or whatever. It's just having the right kind of mental architecture. And you don't get to pick that. You can't be a creative person just because you want to be. You can't be good at abstract concepts or mathematics or whatever just because you want to be. You either are or you aren't. Some of it you can train, but some of it is just you're born with 2 arms and 2 legs. This job requires 3 arms and 3 legs. Well, too fucking bad. You can't grow 3 legs just because you really want to. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And this ties into that falling rate of profit thing. I have a video on my channel where this is before I became a Marxist. This is before I became any kind of socialist or leftist. And I just pointed out, where does the road end? We're seeing it right now with Jeff Bezos. They're talking about in the next 10 years, he's going to become the world's first trillionaire.
Yeah.
Where does that road end? Because what we see is a pattern that we have seen for 100 years. Hello, cat. Just sit over there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hang on. Get me, pussy cat. Look, you're internet famous.
Hello, cat.
Yeah, he can. Anyway, Mr. Pudding. Don't ask how he got that name. But the point is, this is not a new thing. We've seen this pattern for the last 200 or more years since the outbreak of capitalism. It's like more and more wealth in less and less hands. And so eventually, at the end of the day, you're going to have all of the wealth in one set of hands. You're going to have the world's first trillionaire who literally owns everything. How is he going to sell anything to anyone? It's like nobody's making any money because he owns everything. Yeah. So he's got all of the wealth. That person, and it is going to be a he, you know it. That person is going to have to give people money so that they can buy stuff off of him. Well, why even bother? That's. I mean, what are they going to send out, like armies of Terminators to force you to buy stuff? Yeah, I mean, what is it? This scenario falls apart when it reaches its end. At least with socialism, you have, whatever model you like the best, you have the people in control of the means of production, and they can make the decisions. If the workday drops down to 4 hours, great. Hooray for everybody. We can spend the other 4 hours training or being creative or looking for new solutions or just being at home with the kids, doing all the good life things that we go to work for, whereas under capitalism, it's like, okay, let's fire half those people. Those people no longer have a job. Some portion of those are never going to get a job just because we've got less and less jobs going all the time. Or the jobs that are available, they can't do because they just don't have the right equipment, the right brains, whatever. That's not a thing you get to choose. And then what? It's like, well, they can't buy the things. There's your falling rate of profit. Yeah. I mean, the falling rate of profit has 2 sides to it. One is to get the new profits, you have to have an increased capital investment. So like back in the day, a telephone was just basically copper wires and plastic. It didn't require that much investment. You needed a molding machine and some plastic, and you needed wires and people to put it together. Sweet. But now a phone is ultra high density radio transmitters and receivers, lithium batteries, super high density and capacity chips that run on very low power, perfect, pixel perfect touch screens that work just to give you a smartphone, whatever. All of that requires vastly more investment just to get those extra couple of dollars.
Yep.
And so that's half of it. And the other half of the falling rate of profit is, and now all the unemployed people can't buy cell phones. And it's like you add those two together, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. And we're starting to see it now.
Yeah. And it actually hit the nail on the head too with, say it was Jeff Bezos. He owns everything, right? All his products and everything else. And I mean, even if he gave money away, that money would be worthless as well to buy it. He won't. This is the whole crazy in capitalism. Well, so even if you gave everyone $1 million, even if you give everyone $1 million each, yeah. every man, woman, and child $1 million each to go and buy this, that money would be worthless because no one's actually creating value anymore. It's just basically you might as well have a monopoly money. Just go and buy a monopoly set, and have that. Here's you, or just a bit of newspaper cut out. You might well just write $10 on it. That's it. Because basically, yeah, it's just the whole thing crazy. Capitalism, it certainly digs its own grave. We were seeing this, and all I'm saying is, and this is what the talk we were having the other day. I was talking with a few people, and I just said, look, this is ruthless capitalist efficiency. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's coming down to it. And well, people, I suppose it's going to have to take something when people come wake up, realise, yes, it's the social economic system we live under. That's the problem. The root cause of everything. We can't resolve it from climate change to pandemics right through to unemployment, poverty, etc., even wars. I mean, basically, it'd be question. This man with Bobo's on top of the whole scrap heap. You'd be doing around. Well, there's everyone's now surplus to requirement. What's he going to have to do? Use the Terminators to wipe everybody out? It just all we have to go to war again. I mean, on what over what? Because no one's there's nothing else to carve up. This is just a whole insanity.
And the thing is, even if you send out your robot armies to oppress everybody or just outright kill them, why? What do you gain by doing that? It won't get you any more wealth. If that's all you cared about, now you have won the game of capitalism. Now you own everything. You have all of the wealth and all of the power.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah, you've passed go. You've collected $200. Yeah, and you own all the property on the monopoly set. You've got all that. Now what?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's the key difference between capitalism and socialism is socialism has a plan. Socialism has an end game, whether you like it or not. Yeah. That is an unarguable fact. There is a point to socialism. Sorry, I've got it wrong. Socialism was what I'm talking about. Socialism does have a point. Socialism has an end game.
Yeah.
Whether that works or not, we'll find out when we get there. But the thing is, there is a plan. Capitalism doesn't have that. It doesn't have a plan. Yeah. And that's why if you talk to a capitalist or a capitalist supporter, they can't answer the question, what if you win? Yeah. What happens when you win? Because that was never part of the plan. No. The plan is literally just make the money, survive, repeat.
Yep.
It's like there never was a plan. Yeah. I mean, I think Marx said it. It's like capitalism came about in response to feudalism.
That's right.
And it beat feudalism. Good. That part worked. Then what? Whereas socialism came about in response to capitalism, and it came about in its various forms. Marx obviously is a big one, but there's Islamic socialism as well. There's Bolivarian socialism.
And there's socialism, etc.
Yeah. There's all sorts. And there's even utopian socialism. And basically, they came about in response to capitalism. And as we have discussed, capitalism's big issue is there is no plan. There's not even a grand conspiracy of billionaires in smoky rooms ruling the world. It's each individual billionaire doing their own thing, and getting ahead in their own way without thought as to what happens. There's no plan. That's the problem. It's like the anarchy of production that's talked about. It's like the whole system's anarchy because it's just, I am just a cog in the machine doing my thing. My life might be nicer than you, the workers, cog in the machine, but I'm just following the no plan. I'm not running towards a thing. I'm running away from a thing. The thing I'm running away from is poverty and getting eaten by my neighbors in a capitalistic kind of company kind of sense. Capitalism has no goal. It's just literally running away from poverty. And it's like, well, that's a start. And it's nice if you're the one who's on the top of the heap, but there's no plan. It can't last. I watched a very interesting speech. I will see if I can add it to the page after we've done. I can't remember it right now, but it was a talk between I think he's an economist or a philosopher and his wife, and they were doing an interview. And one of the things he pointed out was capitalism is an accident.
Yep.
It was never intended. And the free market capitalism that we have or are suffering through now was just an accident of the timing of various inventions that happened. Had they happened at different times in different orders, we would never have had free market capitalism. It was just an accident. And the thing is, that's going away, because you can't have free market capitalism when, say, for example, 100% of the job field is automated. And the thing is, that ruthless efficiency that you mentioned is going to push that way. Why would you pay 10 staff $30,000 a year minimum wage, or whatever the hell it is in your country? That's like, 300 grand, when you could buy a machine for 250 grand that replaces them and doesn't take time off and doesn't sue you for bad workplace discrimination or any of those things. And next year will only take 5 grand worth of maintenance, and the year after that, and the year after that, and it will give you 10 years, and then you replace it with another $250,000 machine. It's like, why would you not do that? And as I think Professor Wolf has pointed out, it's not because the capitalists are evil. Some of them are. You could make the argument that Jeff Bezos is a dick and he needs a guillotine, and I wouldn't argue too much about it.
No.
But the thing is,
that's beside the point.
They're cogs in the machine as well. They have to keep running the Red Queen's race. Otherwise, the guy next to them, who's more ruthless than them, eats them. Wipes out their business and sends them to the cleaners. It's like they're trapped as well.
Exactly.
Spare report for the poor capitalist.
Yeah, and this is right. I mean, like here in this country, you hear about corporations or capitalists being greedy and a bad boss and everything. Well, they probably are greedy and bad, and they're probably outright wankers and life. Sorry, but I mean, the reality is, in the day, they're in it to make a profit, and that's just the thing. And there's also capitalists that act right, very nice, pleasant people. They want to wish all goodwill on everybody, but at the end of the day, they're there to make profit, and they have to do things, and if it has to be this ruthless efficiency to do so, they will do it in order to stay in the game. It's like, that's what their priority is. They've got to make profit. They've got to try and find new ways of increasing that profit. I mean, $500 million was great for this year. Brilliant, fantastic. It's all on there. They pat everyone on the hat for it. But next year they've got to make $750 million. They've got to keep increasing that profit margin further and further. But it's got to come to such a degree where it's in crisis, can no longer do that, and the whole thing collapses. I mean, history's
to tie it back to something you said before, when you were talking about mining, blowing up sacred sites and whatever, and to mention Richard Wolff again, he spoke privately to like investor capitalists and CEO board members and stuff, and they said, look, we would love to do the long-term investment. We would love to build an investment strategy that doesn't smash and destroy everything in its way. But if we do that, then somebody is going to stage a board takeover and throw us out, because they will get 2% more return on investment than our safe approach, and we're gone.
That's right.
And it's because a corporation is not a person. If you're the business owner back in the day when you ran a factory in a town, if you screwed over your local people, your local workers, they'll be at your gate, or they'll be complaining to you, or you'll be seeing it face to face. But when you are a corporate board and the factory's in another town, you don't get that feedback. You don't see how your factory is destroying everything, and you don't care. And you get the same with the corporate board, only worse, because it's not a person. A person, you as a boss, could have a conscience. You as a boss could be affected by social controls. But a corporation isn't a person. It's not affected the same way. No. And so the corporation as a unit doesn't care about the kind of damage it causes. No. If some members of the board do care on a human level, because they're not all monsters, they'll be replaced by people who don't.
Yeah.
And so it's self-selecting for psychopathy. A board is a psychopath, because if it's not a psychopath, it gets replaced by one that is, either piece by piece or wholesale.
That's right. And actually, it's an interesting point, because especially in regional areas where capitalist decisions really, well, affects capital cities too, but obviously in regional areas, there's a lot, you can see the effects a lot harder hit. I won't mention the company's name or the conglomerate multinational's name, but say,
not get sued.
Decisions, say there's a factory closure or there's cut back in redundancies, the whole lot. That decision was made in the boardrooms of either Tokyo, New York, London, Paris, Munich, wherever it is. But you're right, they're absolutely right. They do not think of the long-term consequences of that decision to say to close the factory, or, say there was 1,000 workers there, no, we need to chop it by half, 500. Well, they don't see the social costs of that community at all. They might put something out just as a PR exercise. Look, we're sorry to see this go, blah, 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 et cetera, but hey, we have to.
Not so sorry that you don't do it.
Yeah, and they're not there. They'll have their local managers doing the dirty work, and they live there. They have to compensate, and then there'll be those that look at those local managers as the bad people. Well, not. They actually have to carry out the decision of what that board of directors or investors or whatever made on the stock exchange or in the boardroom in New York or wherever it is around the world. That makes those decisions. As an example, when Rio Tinto were talking about automation is made up, I said, the decisions for Rio Tinto are not made in Perth. Yes, they've got the Australian headquarters in Perth, but all the decisions are made through the Royal Bank of England, or Royal Bank of Scotland, Bank of London. The Queen is one of the biggest investors in it, etc. All they're made around a boardroom, what decisions they want to do. This automation, for example, is a classic. I mean, they've automated a lot of Rio's work. They're from being locomotive drivers, replaced by now automated trains, through the big large-scale haul trucks, haul packs.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah,
all automated. They're actually
robotic now.
Near Perth Airport, and on a couple of people there now, and it's actually causing some concerns with accidents and that. Where the truck, it just etc. But all those decisions they make, all that on decision, the social costs and that, they don't take that into consideration at all. It's what they do will affect the local communities around the Pilbara, around the Western Australia, and consequences for the rest of the country at all. Their main thing is, well, how are we going to make more profit? Okay, we've got fully automated, we've got an efficient system now, less people employed, great, we can save our costs there, no one to argue against us, off we go. But at the end of the day, this is where they're going to come into their create of their own crisis. Well, who's going to buy what's produced anymore? I mean,
and I just want to tie that back to everybody's favorite enemy at the moment, China. Another person I follow quite closely is Mark Blythe. He's a sort of centre-left economist. He's not Richard Wolff, but he's interesting to talk to or listen to. So definitely worth a look. And it's like listening to Shrek talk economics. Mark Blythe, he's awesome.
Oh, Mark Blythe, sorry.
Yeah, he's a he's a Scottish expat economist, and so he makes a joke that he sounds exactly like Shrek. And he's just fun to listen to because he's hilarious. He does stand up and economics sometimes at the same time, so he's definitely worth looking into.
So it'd be the same league as Billy Connolly.
Yeah, except more economics. Yeah, a slightly different accent. But one of the things he points out is because he's not a communist, he's not a socialist, but he is generally left-leaning, so he's a liberal. But he pointed out quite a lot of the very important differences between China and the West, and it's one of these differences that get overlooked. When you look at the West, it's generally ruled or run by giant multinational corporations. And that gives you the exact effect that you just mentioned, where decisions are made in head office and probably in another country. So they don't care what happens. As long as the line goes up, they don't care who has to die to get it, literally in many cases. Now, China doesn't have that issue. They have a different issue. They are essentially the baker who lives in the village. If they screw over the people, if they short on the loaves, everybody knows where to find them. And they're not a multinational run from London or whatever. And so Mark makes the very obvious point. He says, when China originally opened up its markets, after they'd been running for a while, they let go of some of the capital controls, and $1 trillion equivalent vanished out of the country in like a matter of days. And so they clamped down on that and put a stop to it. And so that's where a lot of your ex-Chinese billionaires come from. And so they had to have a bit of a sit down and a think. This is, Marxist-Leninist self-crit. It's like, what are we doing wrong that this happened? And basically, what they had done up until that point is they'd sacrificed the people and the environment to get those productive forces to do what they needed to do.
Exactly.
And so that prompted essentially the Xi Jinping era, where one of his big things is fixing that.
Yeah.
As Mark pointed out, it's like, what's wrong with our country that everybody who's got money wants to leave? And so that kickstarted the big change, the repairing, the renewal of China.
Yeah, actually, good book on that. I'm reading this at the moment.
So am I, but mine's a PDF.
Yeah. So, if anyone likes to understand China, this is really good. And Xi Jinping, the Governance of China, Part 1.
That is
it's quite thick. It's quite thick, but it's actually quite good. It's easily read too. Yeah. Sorry.
No. And the thing is, that made them think. It's like, what have we done to the country that anybody who can leave will leave? Do we want to be the kind of repressive government that fixes this problem by stopping everybody leaving, or fixing the environment so that people don't want to leave? And so that has led in large part to not only poverty alleviation, which is good for the country on a lot of different levels, but also making China the kind of person where if you have money, you don't immediately want to leave.
Exactly.
And that's that whole sort of baker that lives in the town kind of shtick. The CPC is in and of China. They can't leave. They shouldn't leave. They're not gonna leave. Good. But that also means that they have to be responsible for what happens. They can't pollute and destroy the environment and let people die and not care, because they're in the environment. Everybody knows where to find them. The pitchforks know where to go. When you've got Flint, Michigan being poisoned or whatever because of their water supply, it's like, it doesn't matter if you show up at the doors of the local water plant with your pitchforks. They're not in charge. They're not running the thing. They're not providing the money needed to fix this. They'll go, yeah, I agree with you. I live here too. I don't want my kids to get cancer and die, but I can't fix it. And it's the same dodge you see when you call your local internet provider and there's a problem. They say, yeah, I'm just the guy who answers the phone. I can't fix that. Head office came up with that policy. I can't fix it. Sorry. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. China doesn't have that.
No.
If they fuck up, they're in the boat with everybody they fucked. Whereas in the West, it's like the people doing the fucking are in a different boat. And that boat has an outboard motor and they can leave.
That's right.
That's the difference. Responsibility.
Even
if you don't like the other things that the CPC does, they've got that. And that's a good thing.
I'm just going to put this on pause for a minute. I'll just need a 2-minute interlude. Right. Come back after a 2-minute interlude. Well, it's interesting you point out about people leaving, etc., because that's right. And obviously leaving it up to someone else to deal with the mess, to deal with it, and they can get away with it. And what was interesting about China too, some of the laws they've got in place about their billionaires. So if one of the workers or several workers are killed at work, a lot of the managers and their billionaires themselves are arrested immediately. And they've actually got very strong industrial manslaughter bills or industrial murder laws, and they find that the company's been negligent. It goes right up to the top head honcho billionaire or board of investors, and they actually are put in jail for a very long time.
It's good because not only does it put the responsibility where it should lie, but it's like you can't get that Western style thing where I didn't know, it's not my fault. It's like the question then becomes, why did you not put in a policy to make sure this never happened?
Exactly. Exactly.
Maybe we're not holding you responsible for the industrial accident that killed 3 people. We're holding you responsible for not putting a policy in place to make sure that didn't happen.
Exactly. And
it's like when you've got nowhere to run, you've got to clean up your mess.
Exactly. So, and I think that's what the fundamental difference between what China is and, say, for us in Australia and New Zealand, where anyone, as I said, a lot of decisions and stuff are made overseas for our economies, etc. We have to get government policy around those decisions as well. And look, even too, it's notorious here in Australia. I'm not too sure about New Zealand, but basically, respective of who's in government here, federally, but they either become mouthpieces of US policy. Basically, what we call the puppet. Yeah, up as soon as Trump says something, oh, we're jumping on the bandwagon. But behind them, all those sitting on the boards of the weapons manufacturers and everything else. Yes, during a pandemic, Morrison government here turns around and announces $270 billion worth in so-called defence. A defence manufacturing. So, great, work that way. But what they're not realising is this is all coming orders from the US, and we have to gear our policy. They don't. Those sitting around the boardroom who directing the US president and the US government, and then telling us what directing us. They're not actually looking at the consequences of their decisions. They're only just seeing what profit they can make out of it. And actually, I have said this too on that side of it. In military, I'm saying this to a lot of people. We will not win. We'll come out at all if we try to go up against military against China. This crap about this ulcer anyway. Basically, we would not survive. And actually, I said China won't even need to attack us at all. They'll just basically just block us off completely, and we would have nothing coming and going out of this country. We just come to a standstill anyway. And it's just silly. It's just silly. It's just silly. Yeah. But it's just silly. And our correct thing, we should be having friendly, peaceful relations with China overall. And even that, all our immediate neighbours around there, there's no benefit of us to be aggressive to anyone in this region at all.
Well, there's a very good, clear, and telling comedy skit that you may have seen. It's not one of the honest government ads, which I'm sure you've seen.
Oh yes, I love the juice media.
They're good. They're good. A little bit depressing, but very good. No, it's a different one. It's a skit where the Prime Minister is talking to various military types, and they're being evasive. And he says, why are we spending $30 billion? Oh, to protect our strategic interests. Can you be more specific? To protect our Pacific strategic interest. More specific, Indo-Chinese strategic. Okay, I'm just going to say, and you can nod.
Oh, yes. That's the ABC series, comedy series, Utopia.
Yeah. And it's like, So and the end of the whole skit is, so we're spending $30 billion to protect our trade route with China from China. And he's like, yes. It's like, and the thing is, it goes the same for the Americans, a little bit less so. But it's like, if your major trade partner is the person you're now an enemy with, yeah, that's really dumb. Because if you look at the Chinese economy, if, say, for example, we'll just stick with Australia, if they just slammed down the door and said, no more trade with Australia, we're at war with you, or whatever the fuck, that would hurt China. That would mess up their economy. But not that much. They wouldn't like it. They lose some billions. It would be a problem, definitely. But they could take that hit because they are China. Australia would end. That's like a third of your entire economy or something or other. And that's not even including the silly stuff about military shit. It's like the Americans have the same problem. It's like, it's the same. It's like, if they slam down the door and no trade with China, that would be very painful and troublesome for the Chinese economy. No argument, because like 20% of all Chinese trade goes to the US or something. But that's like even worse for the Americans, on top of the fact that their economy was in free fall and imploding before Corona hit, then Corona hit, then you've got this. It's like you jumped off of a cliff into a volcano, and on the way down you decided to shoot yourself and drink poison. It's like, wow, you really wanted to die.
It's like a little saying a comedian here, Peter Grace, says, when we're dealing with fascists, generally it couldn't get any dumber, but at the same time, it will. I mean, when, for example, China turned around and put a massive tariff on our wheat export, right, to them, because they're one of our largest, probably the largest exporter of wheat for us in Australia and other grains as well. They put a bit of tariff on their news and dumping as well. Next thing was meat products. And this so got all followed because the federal government following the US line and aggression. That's what it comes down to. But the thing is, I'm dealing with a company at the moment, I won't mention the name, but it deals with that grain area. We're dealing with the maintenance thing, and someone says, oh, well, we'll find other market. I said, where? What other market? Where?
Yeah.
Just like where. We're actually, in fact, we should actually learn our history as well. For a fact, is when
And that's a very good point you bring up there, because this people say this a lot, but they don't really think about what it means. End stage capitalism. Even as recently as 30, 40 years ago, we weren't at end stage capitalism. There was always the potential for you to expand out into another market, some undiscovered country that you hadn't sold cell phones to or whatever. That's gone. There are no other markets. 100% of the markets are now in play. You can't get a new market, so you can only fight over what's there.
Exactly. And
like the only new market and this is what saved capitalism like 30, 40 years ago, however many years ago, was when China opened up and American products or Western products could be sold to China. That was a new market, and that saved capitalism. Without that, they would have hit this point 3-4 decades ago or more, maybe. And now they're stuck, because it's like, not only is China now about as open as it's ever going to get, but the Chinese are not stupid, and they are basically starting to dominate their own markets. It's like you look at the whole Huawei iPhone thing. It's like iPhones are becoming less and less popular, not only because of the Americans being idiots, but also because the local stuff is better and cheaper and doesn't have spyware and shit in it, and the locals will know that. It's like, why, if you're Chinese, why would you buy an American iPhone when it's not as good as the one you can get from over there, which is locally made, and they think the same way we do? You know, you're proud of your country, I'm proud of mine, they're proud of theirs. It's cheaper, it's better, it's not American spyware, and hey, it's made in China, and we're proud of that.
It's under worker control, because I think it was 2/3 of Huawei is actually under worker.
Yeah. It's not a perfect co-op, but it's definitely along those lines. And I'm not sure it counts as a worker self-directed enterprise, but it definitely counts as something on the way there. Yeah, and they are kicking the crap out of other Chinese-run companies. So other Chinese-run companies are thinking about taking the plan on board, and there's plenty of them. So it's like, yeah, that there are no new markets. And the thing is, the Chinese are dominating the biggest market in the world, which is them, and also Europe. And they were doing it to the US. It's like there's no win for this in terms of the US.
Yeah,
and that you can't win a war against them as well. Sorry, this was I'll just this really short thing. One of the things I ended up having to research was the state of the American military versus, say, that of China. Now, we all know that the US has got the biggest military and the most powerful military in the world, blah, 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 blah. Turns out to be bullshit. When Mao said paper tiger, he wasn't kidding. The American military isn't the most powerful or advanced military in the world. It's the most expensive military in the world. That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
There's some beautiful articles in Black Agenda Report. So anybody listening to this,
I love listening to them on podcast,
has not already signed up for Black Agenda Report, go do it now. It's brilliant. I won't say they're 100% perfect, but they're really good about many things. And one of the things that was pointed out in an article about COVID, of all things, was it was like the bottom half of the article. The top half of the article was how the American military is handling COVID badly. But the bottom half of the article was about the state of the American military in general. And it made some very, very key points. One, morale is terrible. Morale in the American military is very, very low. Because back in the day, you know, when the likes of you or I might sign up for the military, it was all about fighting for freedom and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, nobody's fooled. Everybody knows, doubly so when Trump ripped the mask off. Your job as an American soldier is not to fight for freedom, it's to go overseas and steal oil or lithium or whatever the fuck it is they want now. That's your job.
Yep.
And so that blew a hole right through, you know, morale. You can't fool anybody. And even if you're an ignorant, you know, inner city person who joined the military to get out, you won't stay that way.
Yeah.
And then, so morale's low. Then on top of that, because the American military budget has been so ridiculously high, it has led to some unusual effects. some of which you'll be entirely able to predict, like $600 toilet seats and a $500 hammer. Okay, cool. But on top of that, because so much money has been coming in for so long, so ridiculously huge, it has been possible for people to steal huge amounts of money, millions, billions of dollars, constantly. Now, that wasn't a problem until the system gets put to the test. So what you have, and this is from the Black Agenda report, they have the American Navy can't finish 3 of the frigates that they already have. This was just the scope of the article was 3 frigates, but this goes for other stuff as well. They can't afford to finish those frigates. Why? Because the cannon shells for the frigates cost $800,000 American dollars per shell. And that's not a missile, that's just a bullet that goes bang. It's a good bullet, it's pretty good, but that's just a shell. So you can imagine how much the rest of it costs. You know, a big ass diesel engine that costs $2.5 billion or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
Why does it cost that much? Because people have been stealing the money and padding the books and all the rest of it. So, and these aren't aircraft carriers. These are just frigates. These are cheap stuff in military terms. And they can't afford to finish those. This is with an $800 billion or $750 billion budget or whatever the hell. Because they've just been looting it pork barrel style, just give me the money. And then when you put all that together with the fact that the Navy, which is the one that will be doing any actual fighting with China, at least for the start, is woefully out of date. It's like they are designed to essentially fight World War II. Hello, 21st century. Anybody who's spent any time looking at the various articles about war with China or whatever will go, hang on, there's all these frigates and aircraft carriers all roaming around the South China Sea, which is well within the range of new Chinese hypersonic missiles. Those missiles are expensive. They're like $100 million a shot. How much is an aircraft carrier?
Exactly.
A lot more expensive. So if it comes to a shooting war, you've got old, out-of-date crap that can't be finished, that they can't even finish building, with low morale, that's just going to get missiled to oblivion on the cheap, because the Chinese can handle a few $100 million worth of missiles to just go bang, 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 no more ships in South China Sea. Send out some rescue boats. It's just, there's no win here. And the thing is, although Trump might be an idiot, the people near him aren't.
No.
The Americans can't use their big weapon. This is not Japan at the end of World War II.
No.
If they try something stupid like nuke China, China will nuke them to death. There will be no more America. Now,
That's
the return fire from the Americans will probably blow up China and may, wipe out human civilization on Earth. They know that. There's no dropping an atom bomb in Hiroshima moment here. This is, if you do anything that stupid to China, you end, and maybe the world does, and they know that. So there's no win in this.
No.
So it pretty much just has to be saber rattling in order for Trump to try and win the election, because anything else is just lose to the point of you all die kind of lose.
Exactly.
And they know that. Trump might be a twat, but the people near him don't want to die.
No.
So this is all right. So for anybody watching this who's like constantly freaking out about, oh my God, China, relax. This is all saber rattling, because if there's anything else, it's instant death.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
so just chill.
Yeah, look, and China knows well, they're not stupid about how they go about things. I mean, you do hear all this chest beating here in Australia and everything else, and that we're sending 5 or 6 Navy ships off and a couple of submarines off to join the US war games, but we'll go via the South China Sea. They actually don't go near it. They would not go too near, because they'll just go, well, they wouldn't even be sunk, they'll just get captured that easily. It's next thing, basically, nowhere near it. A lot of it's pontificating and, chest beating and etc. And I mean, I'll give you a classic example of just how vulnerable we were. I mean, back in 2014, when we had that complete, utter nut job Tony Abbott as a Prime Minister. I mean, he was just equally as a whack job compared to Trump.
Take your word for it. I wasn't following politics.
Big wing nut ears and everything else. And full lad. Anyway, when he was
don't hassle a guy for his ears. He didn't control it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll just throw that in. A bit of a laugh. But we had we had that. I think it was the ASCD or some big international meeting in Brisbane, in Queensland. There, Putin was coming to Australia. Represent Russia, and at the time, Tony Abbott was going about Russia. He's going to shirt front Putin. Well, it didn't happen. Obviously, he backed down, gave him a handshake. But it was interesting. The Russians, at the time of Putin came down with 3 of the Russian Navy ships, pretty impressive ships, mind you. Their type of a cruiser or a frigate's a lot bigger than ours too. Anyway, it was just 3 ships. Did you hear the panic buttons all of a sudden in Australia? Oh my God, 3 Russian ships! Oh, they stuck out in the international waters. And all our Australian Navy did was just give them a few, they could signal with each other's lights and flags and saying hello to each other. And Putin was flying in Queensland that way, and it was just nothing. And mind you, one of the ships turned around, I think all 2 of them turned around back to Russia, and one of them went down to Antarctica for their Antarctic expedition and stuff. But it's just like, it's sort of crazy. And I just thought, back then I thought I got it. I said, no, and you're right. Our navies now are sort of World War II centric. It's just like, the world's moved on. You don't need large scale aircraft carriers a whole lot. And you're right too. I mean, if the US wanted to actually attack China and using a navy, it's got to get all these troops, all these resources there over across a massive ocean to get there. And by then, China's got.
Yeah, and the thing is, if they tried that, by the time they got 200 kilometers outside of US, they're in range of Chinese missiles. Bang! Yeah. There goes your ship. Yeah, and it's a hypersonic missile. It'll arrive in like 3 minutes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I mean, Black Agenda Report is wonderful. Let's plug them. No, they don't pay me. But they did a beautiful article, and I can't remember what it was about. Something about China and Americans, but the key point was their cover photo. Okay, I don't think they knew they were doing this, but it highlighted it beautifully. It was one of those beauty shots of ships of the line. So it was taken from the front, and they just offset it just a little bit so that you could see like 5 ships in a row. Look really nice. And then the Chinese had done the same sort of thing at some stage, and they're taking a photo of that. And so you had a side-by-side comparison of like 5 Navy vessels, right? And the thing is,
okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, that wasn't even the point of the article. This was just a side effect. And it was just the absolute contrast between the two. They were like all frigates or destroyers, small-ish, medium-ish ships. No worries. But the contrast between them, the Chinese ones look like they were manufactured in the 21st century. They were crisp. They had hard lines. They had, radar domes all over them, anti-missile stuff, freaking lasers for all we know. Apparently, the Chinese had built railguns on some of their ships. It's like, holy shit. And then you look at the American ones, and they're not rusty, but they're old. They're tired. They're out of date. And you don't have to be a shipwright to know that. You just look at them. Yeah. The colors are faded. The designs, they've got like battleship guns on them or something. And it's like, they're from World War II. These are ships designed to fight World War II all over again. Yeah. And this is just from a photo. You just look at those two. You don't have to know anything about anything military or technological. You just look at them and you go, yeah, I know who's going to lose this fight. You can ask for a better shot. It was just like, holy shit. And I don't think the Americans know this. It's like, or at least the people who do know aren't in charge. It's like another thing that came up is the Russians have come up with and are in the process of completing a anti-missile system that the Russians have always had a really good anti-missile system, the S-400 system.
Yes,
but they've got an even better one now, the S-500 system. It's not very creative when it comes to names, but this system can shoot down ballistic missiles, so ICBMs. So when they complete this, if you try to nuke Russia, you will no longer be able to nuke Russia. They will just shoot them down. Curiously, this system also shoots down drones, satellites, aircraft, anything else that happens that they happen to take a dislike to, they can just blow it up. Yeah. And now they're selling it to China. And this assumes that the Chinese haven't already decided, yeah, we'll build our own system. And the Americans don't have an equivalent. And in fact, their Patriot missile system is so out of date, it has trouble with Scuds. And Scuds were invented in what, the 60s, the 50s?
Actually, if you saw something in action, Syria is a classic example, because the Russians helped Syria and Damascus, and when Israel tried to throw those missiles. bang, press a button, bang, and just destroy the. I think a missile did hit Syria, but it was just like out in the middle of nowhere. Basically didn't affect anything. So they just go bang, press go on, we'll just blow your missiles out of the sky. Next, you bring your aircraft, we'll do that same as well. So.
If you can shoot down a missile, by God, you can shoot down
if Israel was so sophisticated, they would have moved in on Israel by now. So yeah, although they'd love to, but they know they can't. They've actually got all this sophisticated system in place. Israel's going, whoa, thinking twice before it leads a monumental attack like that. So yeah, no, you're right there. It's certainly it shows in the superiority of China and even Russia, and that, it's just and you're right. A lot of it's just all chest beating about getting.
The thing is, Wolf talks about this a lot economically.
Yeah.
But he doesn't go into a lot of the other things as well. Like Professor Richard Wolf, very good speaker. I love listening to him, even if he's not as shows, as we might be. But he's good at explaining things. And he talks about economics a lot, which is his thing. But the thing is, there's more to it than that. It's not just the collapse of the US economy. It's not just the ending of their imperialistic ambitions, which China has a large part in.
Yep.
It's the fact, and it's not just that their systems are out of date, it's that it's all coming together at once. So the imperialist grip is slipping, the imperialist economy is falling apart, other nations are rising, they are no longer in a position to project militarily. And this is the key part, and he doesn't go into this a lot, but other economists like Mike Bluth and a few others do. The reason the Americans can get away with the imperialistic style policies that they do is because they have a massive military, right? We all know that. The reason they have a massive military is because the US dollar is a reserve asset. Everybody has to buy US dollars.
Oh, yes, right.
Plus, they have their, I forget what it's called, SMART system or SWIFT or something, where international big trades, like in billions of dollars, have to go through dollars, and they skim a little bit off the top. So if you buy, 20 billion rubles worth of oil or something or other, it has to be converted into dollars, go through the American system. They skim off 2% or whatever the fuck the number is. They get to keep that. So that's like rent. It's just money for nothing. Yeah. And that money goes into funding their ridiculously huge military, which gives them the clout to do the things that they do. That's ending as well. It's like Iran, China, Russia, Italy, all of the countries that signed onto the Belt and Road, Pakistan, they are all moving to a system that doesn't do that. So that means that in addition to all their other economic woes, they now are losing the gravy train that let them keep the huge military. That's why they're so fucking desperate. Because on top of the imploding economy, on top of the problems that they've got with their military being basically crap and nobody realizing it until you actually push it, the paper tiger thing, they're also losing the free gravy train that let them keep all that crap. That's why they are so crazy and so desperate. It's not even just Trump being a nutter. He is, no argument.
Oh, look, it's a complete whack job. We all know that,
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, that's why they're so desperate and so crazy. This is like the lashing out of a wounded beast that knows it's going to die. That's why all this is happening. They have to make use of their massive military now, before 5 years from now, they no longer have a massive military, because they can only get away with just printing money out of nowhere because of the global reserve. That's ending. They can only keep the income that they've got going because they're skimming off from whenever Russia tries to sell oil to Iran or whatever the hell. And that's ending.
Yeah.
And the thing is, unless they go full on World War II, throw everything they've got at China, and that still probably would work, to be honest, because, dude, China, then they can't militarily do anything. So it's literally just, look at my big dick. I hope you're intimidated. You better do what I say. And China's like, yeah, we don't care. We're not into dick. Go somewhere else.
We're not interested. Yeah, never have been.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have a more clear-cut example than what apparently, allegedly, President Xi has said to the military, which is, you will not fire the first shot under any circumstances. They are willing to take the first hit, even if it means a destroyer gets blown up or a military base gets bombed or whatever. It's like they don't want to die. And President Xi has demonstrated that he sure as hell doesn't want his people to die. But they are willing to take the step to say, you will not fire first, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's something you can respect. Even if you don't like China, if you don't like the culture or whatever, you can respect that is a serious commitment to doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. No, they are doing the right thing. Look, I'm just looking at where the time it is.
Sure. No
12:20 my time, and it'll be 2:20 yours time. So, yeah, no, that was a really good explanation, a really good discussion we've had today. It's been well over 2 hours. Obviously, too, for the audience, also watch this space with Lebanon at the moment. You can see where the US and using France and the others trying to destabilise that way to get it back at Syria and everywhere else. And also keep an eye on Belarus at the moment. That's a bit problematic when we had a president there who wants to try and play off both sides. So I thought, I hope something comes to his senses there and realise it's don't try and play with fire with the devil.
That's yet another colour revolution.
Yes, exactly. And unfortunately, there's some operatives in Belarus, I'm led to believe, from sponsored by Washington, London, etc. They're trying to destabilise. So hopefully, the leadership of Belarus can wake up and learn from history. This is what happens when you're trying to play off both against each other. With the one coming out second best, that's for sure. Or if that's even to survive. So, yeah, certainly there.
I think they would learn from the fall of the Soviet Union what's awaiting them.
Oh, look, you look at Romania, what happened there when they tried playing off both sides. And look at Yugoslavia, the same thing, that played off both sides. Libya to a certain degree as well. It just,
the Middle East. Like all
dance with the devil, you're going to get burnt, and that's this is what I'm seeing there as well. Hopefully they can I'll repeat that. Hope they can stabilise the situation and look the way they do and look towards Russia and China and everything else to get back on board with the anti-imperialists as well. There's obviously a lot of underlying economic problems there as well. And as I said, I also touched on Lebanon. Watch this space. There's a lot more information is going to come out after that massive explosion. They're hearing about corruption and everything else. Some people say it was deliberately done. Obviously, the operatives, well, it's probably a little bit premature to say who did it yet, but obviously...
I've heard any amount of conspiracy theories about that.
Yeah. So
it was a nuke because it was a mushroom cloud. It's like, no, it was 2,500 tons of ammonium nitrate. That's 2.5 kilotons. That's a big bomb.
Yeah, and when something like that, even dynamite, etc., breaks down, it becomes more volatile than it was when it's freshly manufactured. Oh, yeah. So,
and it wasn't stored well.
It was a disaster waiting to happen. But unfortunately, the imperialists have seen this. Well, this is an advantage to get in there now and start destabilising it a lot more.
Well, that's something a lot of people forget when they get a bit too conspiracy theorists. They often just assume that it was all part of a plot, when it's like, it doesn't have to be. All they have to do is just wait until a disaster strikes, and then they take advantage. Yeah, exactly. They don't have to detonate a bomb. They just wait for something to go wrong and go, use that.
Oh, we've got a perfect opportunity now, a perfect storm moment.
Exactly.
We can move it. Well, look, I've got to wrap this discussion up. This has been a really good discussion. I thought we'll probably limit another 2 hours, but we went over that time. So, look, it was a pleasure speaking with yourself. It's good to have that Trans-Tasman across the ditch, as they say. We didn't get into discussion about Wallabies and All Blacks, but anyway, that's another discussion another day. But it's just
All Blacks. That's a sports team. They play.
Yeah, one of those things. But I don't say. But it was really good. Actually good to hear from comrades from New Zealand as well, because obviously you're in it together with us in one aspect. The other, we hear snippets of it.
We all live on the same planet.
Yeah, and we got to actually go further discussions, because a lot of actually a bit further discussion about all the movement in New Zealand. For many years, I've only got limited history.
Unfortunately, from my take on the thing is there isn't much of a movement in New Zealand.
Okay.
I did sign up with the NCPA, which is the New Communist Party of Azirahel, but I don't know if they're a bit overwhelmed or just too short-staffed or whatever, but it's taking a while. I'm like, hey, I'm here. I want to do something. Hey, wake up. I think we have the opposite problem to the US, which is things are too nice here. Things haven't quite devolved into that neoliberal hellscape. certainly not on the scale of the Americans, possibly not even as bad as you guys. I don't know. I haven't really had a chance to compare the details, but we have the problem that because things are basically nice here, people are not impelled to go and fix it. So I think, you're seeing uprisings in the US, you're seeing things happening in the UK because conditions are bad. So people are prompted to move. New Zealand, I'm not saying it's paradise, definitely not. I'm a privileged person, so I'm lucky in that regard. But because we don't have the shitty horribleness to really ram home the way the Americans have had, or other countries, that something has gone wrong, people are relatively happy. And because we have these states, you have people who go, yeah, I know things aren't great here, but God, look at the US. I'm so glad that I live in New Zealand and don't have that problem. And so I think the revolutionary potential is somewhat lower. Now, this is just my personal perspective, so maybe I'm completely wrong and everybody but me is a communist. I don't know. But that's not the way it feels.
Yeah.
So I think things are going to have to get a good deal worse before they start to really take off.
Look, the same here in Australia. I mean, a lot of people have said like we're not like the US and everything else with guns and all the extremeness of what.
Wait a couple of years, it will be.
Yeah, but look, things change. Material conditions change. I mean, look, I agree with you. I mean, New Zealand is a lovely country. I was over there 22 years ago. There for 2 or 3 months. Quite a good friend of mine lives there, just north of Wellington, Paikariki, and when I travelled with him through the North Island, and also went down through the South Island. It's a beautiful, lovely country. I love snow-capped mountains and forests and that. And it is awesome. But at the same time, on the own side of it, material conditions do change. And look, the things are going to get fundamentally a lot worse. I think it's, the revolutionary potential like this, at the moment in Australia is quite low. But at the same time, things change, and things change can pretty move very quickly too when they realise. I think even though all those, the history's shown us from the Paris Commune right through up to now, I mean, back then the Paris Commune, things just moved very quickly. Back in this was 1871 or whatever it was, that moved very quickly.
My mum has had something interesting to say about that. She's not a leftist by any stretch of imagination. I try to avoid talking politics because it's drama, but she said that writing and stuff that's going to happen here, because she does a lot of work in the community. So she really has her finger on the pulse of a lot of sort of people at the lower end of the political socioeconomic spectrum. And she said it's going to happen here because there is next to no middle class anymore. At least this is her take. I don't know how accurate it is. And historically, the middle class is what the upper class uses to stop the lower class from eating them. And so if you get rid of it, then you have basically the lords and the serfs and fuck all in between. And so sooner or later, they're going to go, okay, get the pitchforks. And if you get rid of that safety mechanism, here come the pitchforks. And so even my mum, who's not a leftist, not a communist, not a socialist, she just works with poor and underprivileged people. Yep. She says, yeah, it's going to break out here. And there's no sign of it, but she's in a position to know. And if somebody who's not a communist, who's not a revolutionary, can sense it coming, then yeah, I don't think we're that far behind. I just think we have that issue that New Zealand has always had, is we are behind the curve.
Yeah.
In some ways we're ahead, but we're behind the curve in the way of the weakness.
Look, Australia and New Zealand, we've been relatively for many years stable capitalist countries. There was no need to, compared to a lot of the rest of the world. It was interesting because we're actually not Western countries. We're part of the first world, but we're actually part of the global South. We're just first world nations. It was that, and people don't seem to see like that, like you're saying, it will come. Probably don't see it coming, but it's just a matter of if it comes. It's a matter of when. And it's material conditions can change very quickly, and it's a matter of time when it does.
There's always the hopeful potential for us to be so far behind the curve that by the time it gets to here, America's a socialist country or something. It's like you can hold out hope. Yeah. And so then, without the imperialist powers trying to just smash everything, we can maybe we can do what some of the South American countries did, which is vote in socialism or some variation of it.
Yeah,
that would be nice. But
Yeah,
it
well,
would be
zero.
nice not to have a revolution and just go, yeah, okay, this didn't work. Let's just vote on something that does work. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath. But you can
No,
always hope.
no, not all right. Anyway, well, look, I'm going to call an end to this. This has been a really great discussion, and look, I appreciate your time. Pleasure to meet you as well. Obviously, I propose we could do all these live chats anytime, or we'll have to work out time
Absolutely.
most suitable for everyone. I will now, from now on, I'll try and attempt to get this up on YouTube and Facebook. I will have to work that out. So I'm still recording it at the moment. And yeah, but I'm looking forward to further chats with yourself. I wish you all the best. And to all those listeners out there, when you do watch this, stay tuned for many more. Thank you.
Okay. All the best. See ya.
Thank you.